we'll get started. For the finance meeting, Monday, January 23rd at 6:30. Make a motion to open the finance meeting. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? There were some requests to move things around, but we'll go right away to the first. The first item is to accept the previous minutes. Did you guys get those and review them? No? So make a motion to table until you have a chance.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? With me is Councilor Lopez, Councilor Tallman, Councilor Vacan. I'm Todd McGee. Councilor Leahy did call me. He has a meeting tomorrow for work in Maine. So with the snowstorm coming up there, instead of waiting until tomorrow and try and get up there, I said just go. So he's actually leaving tonight to go to work for tomorrow. So Councilor Leahy will not be attending. Councilor McGivern is here. With that, we'll go to item number 2, make a motion to remove from the table. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Order that the City Council invite in the school superintendent and the building relocation committee to give an update on the process. So with that, school committee member Brunel is here, Dr. Reich, Marcos, Anthony Soto. Am I missing anyone? Come on in, grab a mic, and we'll go from there. And for people at home watching or in the audience, what had happened is in the budget process, there was a request to have a committee formed in order to go over discussions on relocating 57 Suffolk Street, whether it was buy the building, move to another building, what options did we have? So a committee was set up, of which they have met several times in order to discuss this issue. I felt it was time for us to sit down as a group to get an update to see where we are. We're not picking a location, right? It's just stuff that we found in order to then see what we want to do next. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Reich and then Mr. Soto or whoever wants to go first.
I'll just start by saying thanks for this opportunity. After the budget meetings of the summer, we were asked to come back with some proposals, and I have to say it's been a really strong collaborative effort between the city councilors, members of the school district, as well as school committee members. Formed a task force that I appointed, and they've, I think, come forward with a series of really thoughtful recommendations, and I'm going to ask Anthony Soto and Marcos to share the information with you, and we look forward to getting some more guidance from the City Council of how to proceed. So I'll turn it over to Anthony.
Yeah, I wanted to echo what Steve said. This is a very collaborative process. We had 2 members of City Council on the task force. We had 2 members of the school committee and 2 city employees. Marcos is going to kick off the presentation with just a little bit of background on how we got here and what we're going to cover tonight. And then I'll pick it up with some of the options that we've prepared for your review.
So before you should have 3 documents. One is a summary presentation in the form of a deck. That's the one that has the blue lines and the blue cover. You should have a document that says Timothy Murphy Architects. It forms part of the backbone of some of the underlying numbers as far as the estimates. And you should have a property condition report for 57 Suffolk Street. It was looked into more detail, of course, because it's the location of the current Holyoke Public Schools headquarters. As been said, there was a committee. The members were John Brunel, who's here with us, Rory Casey, the mayor's chief of staff, Irene Feliciano Sims, also in the school committee, councilors Rebecca Lisi, Todd McGee, Anthony Soto, and myself on behalf of the city. The purpose initially, as stated, was providing a better outlook as to the cost to the headquarters for the Holyoke Public Schools. Of course, when you start looking at real estate and options, you realize that the city owns more real estate that is being used. So one of the first questions that was posed in the committee was, are we only going to limit our monetary estimates to what the public schools are facing or what the city would be facing as a whole, understanding that there could be some trade-offs as far as where you locate the public schools and opportunity costs that are facing, that the city would be facing, for example, with rehabbing the annex or some other space, Central Supply. So with the numbers that you will see, it has the broader scope that was taken on by agreement with the committee. About 4 meetings were held amongst all committee members. Facilities were toured: 57 Suffolk Street, Lynch School, Metcalf, Central Supply, the warehouse down on Main Street near 391, and the City Hall Annex. And as I stated, 57 Suffolk, not just the walking tour of the committee members, but there was an actual study commissioned between the city and the public schools to look at what the conditions of the building were. That's to say, if the city were to acquire a property, the city would be facing not only the acquisition cost, but as the owner, would have to be paying for maintenance costs, trying to see if there's any machinery or equipment that would need replacement in a near foreseeable future. The engineers at Fuss & O'Neill took a 7-year approach to that, where they saw that there was a horizon that they could properly estimate. And that formed part of the estimates as well. Normally, when you're paying rent, you pay not just for your occupancy, but all those other maintenance issues. In this case, we had to commission the study to have a better grasp of that. There was also a concurrent study going on that was agreed upon between the public schools and the Massachusetts School Building Authority. Do I have that name right?
Yes.
MSBA. Where they were looking at the demand for, I'll say, scholarly space, education space, right? What is the status of the space that's being used for education purposes in the public schools, and where it should be, or at least how does it compare to the state standards? So that also informs not necessarily completely the monetary side, but some of the more qualitative aspects of what would inform the opinion of the school department. As I said, Tim Murphy Architects did a high-level overview of some of the baseline assumptions for cost for redevelopment, and then the task force discussed several options. Pretty much every property that we could think of that was empty, not every private property, but every publicly owned property by the city, that seemed like it could meet the needs of the public schools was thrown on the table. And then it was distilled down to pretty much, I mean, not distilled down, but 8 of them were contemplated in terms of how these movements could be combined. And so what I think Anthony is going to do now is run through those 8 options. The first option, I think, is just the baseline study. What's going on now? The do nothing option, and then every option we would look at that, and we're all here to answer any questions you may have.
Yeah, thank you, Marcos. So on the slide number 5, what I did here was just summarize all the options that Marcos was talking about. And the first one, as he mentioned, is to just do nothing and continue to rent. The reason we did this over a 7-year period is because we had that Fuss & O'Neill report, and in order to compare apples to apples, we felt that since their report had financial information over a 7-year period, that every option that we present, we should present it over a 7-year period so that we get that really good comparison. So we'll go over what that would cost, as well as fixing the City Hall Annex. And then option 2 is to buy 57 Suffolk Street for HPS offices, and then to also deal with fixing the City Hall Annex. Option number 3 is to combine both the City Hall Annex departments and Holyoke Public School headquarters into 57 Suffolk Street, and to acquire that building. Option number 4 is similar to that, which is to acquire the building, move City Hall Annex departments over, and then at some point Holyoke Public Schools relocate to a renovated Central Supply, or a renovated school, or another space. And And then the fifth option that we looked at was taking HPS and moving it into the City Hall Annex building. Option number 6 was to move HPS to Central Supply in addition to fixing the annex. Option number 7 actually takes into account the MSBA study that Marcos was talking about. One of the things that they mentioned, there could be a possibility of new buildings in Holyoke and a possibility of some buildings coming offline. So this option says that if one of our buildings were to come offline, we can certainly move to Central to that one of those school buildings, and there would be a moving costs and renovations associated with that, but that's what we had laid forward in option number 7. And the last option was to move HPS headquarters to Lynch.
And Anthony, if I may, if the chair would allow. When it says fix the annex here, and when it's referencing the annex, it's not meant to be prescriptive to say we have to fix the annex or when it has to happen, but it's meant to encompass the fact that the annex is a liability. It's a fastly depreciating asset. As far as 10 years ago, give or take, or maybe a little bit more than 10 years ago.
2007, yeah.
Yeah. Mayor Sullivan had already commissioned some architectural drawings in recognition of some of the limitations that the building has. I'm sure very well known to this body and the councilors, whether it be roof, access, elevator, that presents costs. So this is not a prescriptive approach on our behalf, but the numbers that are taken in the annex is assuming either fixing it up or mothballing it at some point undetermined.
Thank you. On slide number 6, you also received in your packet a document that says Tim Murphy Architects. Slide number 6 just summarizes all of the assumptions that went into the dollars that we're presenting tonight. And we had an architect take a look at those, and then we used his assumptions and created, for every option, we created a low end and a high end, so a range of costs. Because as everyone is aware, we can't just pick one number and know that number is going to work. We had to assume that that the cost would fit within a range. So the first option, renting central office for 7 years, it would cost on the low end, and in addition to fixing or addressing the City Hall Annex and the report that was done in 2007, the low end of that cost would be $12.6 million over a 7-year period, and would be about $15.7 million. And of that cost, $468,000 is just the HPS rent over 7 years. If we were to consolidate, one thing that you'll see towards the end of our presentation is that we do have a plan, and we are committed to reducing our footprint in central office. Right now, we currently occupy 4 floors, and we have a proposal on the table and have gotten a quote to consolidate down to 2 floors, which would essentially cut our rent in half.
We have a timetable for that?
We were hoping to get feedback from you as to what option to take before we decided to move. We didn't want to move now and then, July 1 have to move again if the decision is not to be at 57 Suffolk. I tried to put some qualitative factors. I mean, this option, clearly the committee has expressed not having no desire to pay rent, so that's one negative thing, is we don't eliminate the rent payment. But one positive is that it does keep all city departments downtown. So,
in my opinion, it would be better to pay 2 floors than to continue paying 4.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Yep. So option number 2 is to purchase 57 Suffolk for HPS only, and still have to deal with the major renovation at the annex. This is an expensive option. It does keep city departments downtown, and that would cost anywhere from $14.2 million to $16.3 million. Moving on to option number 3, what you'll see is option number 3 and 4 are the most cost efficient ones. This would be to acquire 57 Suffolk Street and consolidate all the City Hall Annex departments into 57 Suffolk Street and mothball the building. So that we estimated on the low end would cost $3.1 million over a 7-year period and $4.7 million over on the high end. So between 3.1 and 4.7. And again, the good thing is that that would keep all the city departments downtown. It would, as far as qualitative factors, it would also be the least disruptive to the City Hall, to the Holyoke School Department as well.
One thing on that, Anthony and Marcos, should the report also show if we don't mothball but take down the cost for that? The mothball is about $50,000. The takedown of the annex.
We think that would be between $600,000 and $900,000.
Okay, thank you.
So option number 4 is to acquire 57 Suffolk for the sole purpose of addressing the City Hall Annex issue, and then moving Holyoke School Department headquarters to either Central Supply or another location or a school when it does close down. So on the low end, that would be $8.7 million, and on the high end, it would be $11.5. So this is a slightly different than option 3, that where we do acquire the building, but it's just for City Hall Annex departments, and it assumes that the school department will move to another location, and that location will be renovated. The option number 5 just has us, the school department, move into the annex building. We did have a study, as Marcos mentioned, in 2007, that would cost about it would be an $8.4 million renovation, and we had Tim Murphy take a look at that assumption and to add an addition for Holyoke Public Schools, and with escalation that would actually cost between $12 million to $14 million is what he believes is the estimated cost. So that option is between 17.6 and 23. So this option number 6 is just to move us to Central Supply, not acquire any facilities, and still be left with having to deal with that major renovation of the annex. And that option is between 18 million and 21 million over a 7-year period. Option number 7 is what we had mentioned earlier, is the possibility of moving the school department to a school that closes down in the future. This option assumes that we will be renting. We will continue to rent at 57 Suffolk Street while 1 or 2 new schools are built. And then when a school comes offline, we can then renovate that school for central office space, and we can move into that space.
So if I could just put the asterisk on that. So when he says a school closing, because obviously Lynch is closed, I think it's assuming either Lawrence or Metcalf as comparable in size to what you need, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Because Lynch is a different option.
Yes. Yep. And the last option is option 8, which is relocate Holyoke Public School central office to Lynch School, and not purchase any building to address the City Hall Annex. That option is between 17.6 and 32.5 over a 7-year period. This scatter plot on slide number 17 kind of summarizes, it brings all the options together on one page and gives you all the ranges that we talked about. So option number 3 and 4, the reason why they're so much lower is because all of the other options assumes that the city would choose to do the $12 to $14 million renovation to the City Hall Annex building and not acquire 57 Suffolk Street and move City Hall departments over there. So does anybody have any questions at this point in the presentation?
Yeah,
I do, going back to building 2 new school, can you put an addition with the school department next to it, one of those facilities, or how that would work?
It's not, it's a great idea, but it's unfortunately that's not, it's not reimbursable from the state. You can only get reimbursed on space that's used for children, and so that would have to be the city would have to fund that 100%.
But my understanding is that either way we will have to pay for a new facility or renovate it, or so we will have to spend the money.
True, you
So-
could spend the money to add it to.
Yes.
Yes, you could.
Yep.
So can you?
It's something we definitely talked about, is
But
that,
I don't see it as an option.
well, because
John Hall, you need a mic?
That I would like to see that as an option.
well, we couldn't do that yet as an option. It kind of is an option in here about the, it's not specifically about adding that on, but about the renovating the new school, because we don't know yet where those schools would be. But it's something where if you went forward with the purchase of Suffolk Street, let's say, with that, and moved all the City Hall Annex departments over there, okay, then with it's going to take 4 to 5 years to have a new school built. So you're talking 4 to 5 years before any type of structure with a central office could happen at that location. So we would know in 2 or 3 years from now whether or not that's a possibility to add that to that. But in the short term, these were our options. Long term, in 2 or 3 years, if they purchase that building, we could move out into a building, come back to the city council and say we'd like to move the central supply, or I'm sorry, move the headquarters to that new building or new school, wherever it would be, and then that would free up space for the city to either add different departments there or to serve as a landlord and rent it. So it's something we have talked about, it, but it's something that, you know, we wouldn't know those. We wanted to get in front of you, but that's an option. So if we went with option of purchasing the property, a couple of years from now, we could come back and say, yeah, the city's purchased the property, and now we want to look at building a new school and adding on. So that's why you don't have it.
Well, it will be, in my opinion, a good idea to look into that option, and also if you're able to downsize to 2 floors or 1 floor, that will be even better. And why do we want to own another property? I wouldn't even bother buying another property for the city, and that's only me. But I mean, I think that we need to downsize, and that's what in my opinion, that's what you should do.
Well, Diosdado, I mean, if it wasn't for Dr. Zreich and the changes, and he's cut a lot of staff over the last couple of years, and he has done a great job of getting it from, 4 floors now, opportunity to get it down to 2 floors, because one of the floors became vacant there, so it's a larger floor, so they are trying to do that. So he's been very good. Him and Anthony has been great about trying to save the city and the school department as much money out of central office and putting it back into the schools. But, when we looked at this as a beginning, that's why we took on the added burden of looking at the annex, because you've got to do something with the annex. The reality is the city has to do something with the annex, whether you build a new one, whether where are those people going to go? Keeping them in the downtown location, somewhere local, is really the only option, and that's why we've been looking at that. So I was one that wasn't in support of even looking at Suffolk Street, but after you put the numbers together and look at everything, then that's a recommendation that I think this committee has made or will be forwarding to the city council. But you've got to do something with the annex no matter what.
Thank you. Peter?
Thank you, Anthony, for coming down and giving us this briefing on it, and so many actually options, and John for looking at what we need to do. I think the best way to do this is to streamline things the best possible way, not to have this one going here, this building shutting down, going to this building, and then later on going to this building when we go downtown. And I look at the different options, and I think I know we're not in the business owning properties, but I think the best option would be option 3, where the city actually renovates that building, buys the building, and has the annex, which is in tough shape for a number of years, to actually move to the 57 Suffolk Street. It seems reasonable, where there's not a lot of moving parts. It seems the least expensive, and I think to keep all those buildings downtown and not maybe Main Street or somewhere up in Northampton Street. I think the sooner we do this, the better, because we've been putting this off for a number of years of where we're going to go. We're going to go to another school. We're going to go to another building. Are we going to build something? I think the best option is to get something here, combine the schools and maybe the annex city departments, and go from there. That's my opinion on this, and I'm glad we have all these options to look at, and the costs. The city only has so much money to work with, so we got to be reasonable in this. And if we keep on putting this off, waiting for a new school to come in, or waiting for a building to be renovated, it could be another 7, 8 to 10 years. So, thank you.
Thanks, Linda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for coming down and going over these various options. There's quite a bit of complexity, but if I'm hearing you correctly on option 3 or option 4, in either case, both departments would fit adequately either into 57 Suffolk or into the annex. If I'm understanding these correctly.
Yeah, the 2 options assume that the building is acquired. Option 3, we do believe that we can fit everyone in that building. There's 6 floors. The school department can consolidate and is committed to consolidating down to 2 floors. And then that will leave the rest of the floors available for the city hall annex, the city annex departments. We think that we can fit everyone into one building.
So, and in looking at option 5, moving the schools into the annex building, and I'm asking this question on the assumption that we don't want to board up yet another building in Holyoke, but that's just for discussion purposes. Sure. And that we would want to renovate the annex, which we may not want to. But in this instance, everyone would also fit into that building if that was found to be the prudent thing to do rather than buying another building.
Isn't it a small building?
Yeah, it was
a Butler building, right?
Yep.
Next to it.
I'm just wondering.
So this option assumes that not only do we do the renovation to the annex, but we would have to build an addition of roughly 15,000 square feet to accommodate central office.
To the annex.
To the annex, correct.
Oh, okay, so it could not.
So the annex is an incredibly inefficient building because I'm going to say most of the square footage. I'm not sure it's 51%, but most of its square footage in the middle is just occupied by stairways. And so if I'm not mistaken, in the 10-year-old study, one of the things that they looked at was, well, if there happens to be a consolidation of city departments with the Holyoke Public Schools and it's brought into this campus, the City Hall campus, then it would be some sort of other, I think it was a 2-story building or something like that, where the current parking lot is.
Oh, okay.
So that's why it's significantly more expensive than, say, marginally rehabbing some office space that's already used as office at 57 Suffolk.
So on the annex, given how much it would cost to renovate it, what is the value of it in comparison to what the renovation costs would be? I mean, is that a prohibitive scenario?
Like a market value, like for sale?
Right, so I mean, from just a practical point of view, is it worth renovating as a practical matter? I mean, assuming it was any other building for any other purpose.
Sure.
You know, just.
It's hard to say what the market value of the building would be. You know, it certainly has some sort of historic value. That's more qualitative than anything, and it's subjective. It is right next to City Hall, and it does have some utilitarian value in that it's right next to all of the departments. Clearly, the farther you are, you know, there are some level of inefficiencies. You know, how many millions of dollars we value that at, but that wasn't part of our exercise.
Well, and I haven't had a chance to review what the cost would be relative to 57 Suffolk if the city was to buy it.
Right.
But just from a practical point of view, if the city would fully utilize it and could offload all these other properties that we already own, you know, I'm not at all warm to the idea of the city being a landlord for rental space. I mean, I just don't see that as a practical use. But on the other hand, if the annex is truly not, I don't know, able to be rehabilitated as a practical matter, it seems that we would need to find a space that would be fully utilized.
Right. So the options for the annex, if it's not rehabilitated for the current use, likely in the short term it would be, if it's not immediately demolished as a policy decision of the city, right, that would cost $600,000 to $900,000. Then in the short term it would likely be boarded up. And my best estimate would be that it could serve some sort of residential or commercial purpose that could take advantage of historic tax credits because it is a historic building. But those tax credits take several years to accumulate. So we could be seeing it, you know, boarded up for 5 years and not active. So those are kind of the trade-offs behind it.
Doesn't feel like urban renewal.
It doesn't, no, it doesn't.
Thank you.
Joe? I think it's safe to say, and I don't speak for everybody, but we pretty much ruled out Lynch after doing a tour and after doing some discussion. There does not seem to be any flavor for moving Lynch, which is being marketed for commercial property. That's my opinion, but I think other people share that with me. Anthony or Marcos, the closed school, we looked at Lawrence not too long ago, 10 years ago, and we found that it wasn't just the cost of renovating Lawrence, but the type of building Lawrence is. It's a bunker, and the type of renovations just don't mix, and right. it just even seemed to be, the costs even seem to jump up higher. My professional opinion, though, is Metcalf's a different type of building with some open space, which makes it a lot easier to renovate, and some unique qualities that I think would fit right into a renovation that might be not as costly. I'm not keen about moving it, the school offices out of the downtown area, out of the government hub itself, as we call it. But that is one location I think, if it were cost effective, that would make sense. Do you have a feel for Metcalf by itself, what it would cost to renovate?
What's included in here as an assumption for that would be around $250 per square feet to renovate for office space.
But that's just an assumption no matter where you go.
It's a very high level assumption no matter where we go.
Different retrofits depending on where you go.
Right.
You know, did Timmy give you that number?
Yes, we provided him with some assumptions that we were using, and he adjusted those, and then from his number, we created a low and a high.
Oh, Timmy's always high. And he's one of our better architects, and we've used him many times, but he will go for top shelf no matter what you do.
And Joe, just so you know, we did, and I think we got some numbers too from Whitney as well, just some other things as well, but we did talk about Metcalf on its own, doing the rental there, but the reality is we need those classrooms for the kids right now, and we don't have a place to put them.
Well, I understand.
But no, that's one of the options we're talking about, like when a new school gets built, to going and looking at Metcalf to do the rental there or another place if we were to buy. You know, we do have, you know, we've talked about everything in its aspect, but it's like a whole domino effect. One thing has to happen for everything to line up for us, but definitely is an option we're looking at once a new school gets built, then we can move those kids into and have more room for the pre-K.
And when I originally suggested Metcalf, that's just about what I said, build a new school. And Dr. Zreich, I thank you for the work you've done, but before you leave us, I hope the buttons are pushed to start the building of one or two new schools in Holyoke.
Don't worry, Mr. McGivern. As long as I have the support of the City Council, we're moving towards that right now. So,
I think it's high time, for our children, for our families, and for our teachers that we take advantage of the state reimbursement, but more important, we do what's right. And then I think our options will become even more clear. But a lot to think about. But the work is incredible. It's Dr. Zreich, it's above and beyond your call of duty. But I appreciate what you've done, and I think most of us as city councilors understand that and appreciate it. But I still think somewhere along the lines, if we're not staying at Suffolk Street or making it possible to stay at Suffolk Street, I wouldn't want to buy that building. I think Metcalf is going to become the answer with a couple of new schools. Marcus, the annex needs a lot of work, but it's going to be more costly than what we can even imagine in these figures here. And if we can sell it and someone can turn it into something else, that's fine. But there's a building next door that we could put into this scenario too. That's controlled by a city body.
If you're referencing one court, it wouldn't fit all city departments.
No, not by itself, but it would be additional square footage to use.
Sure. I mean, I'll concede that there are many options that we could have also considered, but at some point we had to draw a line, and I guess we arbitrarily drew it at what the city already controlled.
Arbitrarily.
Yeah.
We control it. It's always on the chopping block. Thank you.
I don't know. You mentioned that you already downsized from 4 to 3 floors.
We can.
We can.
We have an option on the table. We have a proposal from the landlord that would allow us to do just that, and we're committed to.
Can you help me out how much the rent will be, or do you have an idea how much that will be?
Your last.
It's on slide 16.
Okay, so I haven't
So-
received this.
I'm sorry. So
What's page?
page 16. So currently we occupy 4 floors and we rent 23,000 square feet. And it cost over $300,000 in total, of which $176,000 is base rent. And the proposal that we have on the table, which would be to go from 4 floors to 2 floors, would reduce our footprint from 23,000 square feet to about 11,148,000 square feet. And then that would cost about $151,000 in total, and of which $88,000 is just base rent.
Better, in my opinion. So.
Yep.
Thank you.
And we can, and the reason why we haven't done that yet is because
Right.
we're looking for direction. As I mentioned earlier, if the decision is not to acquire that building or not to keep us there, then we didn't want to mid-year make a move from 4 floors to 2, and then on July 1 have to make another major move, which comes with costs.
But Anthony, let me ask you, if you're going from 4 to 2, how don't tell me that you're going to sign a lease for 5 or 10 years. How long is going to be the lease? I mean,
We would bring that forward. I think 3 years would be. We haven't gotten that far in the discussions with the property owner, but I don't think we can do more than 3 years without city council approval.
my recommendation is that you do a year lease and then take it from there.
That might drive the cost up, but yeah, we can get pricing for that.
We need to find out and see how much that will be. I mean, if it's $5,000-$10,000 more, I'd rather do a year.
Right.
And I'm just thinking here aloud. I mean, but I mean, if you can find out,
if
you can find out all that information, that will be good for us to make a decision. Thank you.
John?
I was just saying, where are you going to go? You know, I mean, that's the thing is, you know, it's a whole timing thing. I think they've done a great job of going from negotiating down to the from 4 floors to 3 to 2, and you know, that's because he's made some big cuts, but you know, you have to look at the savings that's going to be in the long term. We're talking, you know, 7 to 10 years savings that can be done. With that and what the city decides. I mean, we can only recommend where we're going, but it's going to be up to the city council and the mayor to decide, you know, if they're going to purchase a building, are they going to give support to renovate a building, and you want to hang on for 4 to 5 years and either do a new addition onto a new school or go and redo Metcalf or, you know, one of the other schools that possibly would close or downsize. So it's long range planning. We've given a lot of options, and now we have to really make a decision.
Patrick, do you have anything or?
No, I just echo what Anthony said. We're ready to downsize as soon as we get the direction. I mean, we're it's not a. Fortunately, the space that we go to is already furnished, and the landlord has told us we can move really as at any point. So. But we just, of course, we want direction here because we don't want to move more than once.
Yeah, Linda?
Thank you. In this property condition report, I haven't had a chance to look at it, but what would be the total cost if we're looking at the option of putting everything at 57 Suffolk?
So the operating costs?
No, the repair and reno costs.
So the renovation costs for putting the city departments into 57 Suffolk is not in the report. This report is only what it would cost to operate the major systems and upgrade any major systems throughout the lifespan of those 7 years. What we did is we added the costs that were in this report, and then we added an estimate for what it would take to upgrade. I can't remember how many floors we estimated based on
3 floors.
3 floors. For the city hall departments, and so that should be in the Tim Murphy page. I'm sorry, I just don't know the numbers by heart.
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm just trying to see where I can see them, because if we're talking renovating the annex, which is a very expensive option, but we also have to renovate 57 Suffolk right after we buy it. I mean, to be able to make a comparison, we have to have similar costs to compare.
Right, so the annex would pretty much be a gut job, which is a very high cost per square foot. The 57 Suffolk, it's operational for offices. It has clear access ways. The elevator, for the most part, works. I think it mentioned some sound that it makes sometimes, but you know, it's operational. The cost to move in there is the build out. So it's not a gut job, but if you're making, you know, partition walls with electric outlets, that sort of thing. So it's a much lower cost than gutting out a really old building.
Right, but to go back to your point on the major mechanical things in 57 Suffolk, can you point me to where the cost on that is?
The cost estimate is on, I think it's the one on page 3 of the study. It has a table titled Estimated Construction Budget. And then to that, you would have to add the cost of acquiring the property, which would be the building and the parking lot.
And
that is not in the documents before you. We have reason to believe that it could be acquired for $1.1 million.
So taking it out 7 years on page 3 and projected price of $2 million. So we're looking at 3.
Yeah, it's actually option 3 in the presentation. Over a 7-year period, that would be 3.1. So between that
includes the things
that includes
that I'm asking
moving,
about.
That includes moving and possibly renovating 57 Suffolk. You may need to do some network upgrades there to make sure the internet, some phone wiring, things like that. So that that comes with a cost. So we, you know, all in, we believe that that would cost over a 7-year period 3.1. And you have what the estimated maintenance on the building would be. Marcos gave the purchase price, so the delta would be what it would cost to move.
But we have this isn't including the purchase though, right?
Yeah.
What is not?
Is the 3 million?
Yes.
It is including the
Yes.
purchase as
Yep.
well, and the operations, okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
So in closing, based on all the information that we had provided, we're looking for some guidance from the committee as to where to go from here. What options should we start looking at? Should we consider consolidating down to 2 floors? We're also asking, December was the last month that we had appropriated in our budget for rent. We don't have any more money to pay the rent. So we're also asking if the committee would reappropriate those funds so that we can close out the year until a decision's made.
Are there any other questions for the committee?
I just want to get this clear. So you're looking for us to put the money back that we cut? That's what you're saying?
And give us some direction.
How soon do you need that?
We ran out of money in December, so we don't have money to pay January's rent.
Doctor?
Yeah, we're looking for a home, so, no, we've spoken to the landlord about it, but clearly we need to be able to get through the year, and obviously the sooner the better, but we're also thinking beyond. We obviously have to get through this year, but we know we've got to think, long term. So the sooner the better, but I understand that that's subject to your deliberations as a council.
So looking at this quickly, and I can be corrected if I'm missing something, it looks to me like other than buying 57 Suffolk Street, none of these other options would happen in less than a year. So it seems like it would be a safe bet to downsize from the 4 floors to the 2. Just on a quick look.
Mm-hmm.
I can't see the downside of that. That's just me.
And just for us as a group and what we report out to the full city council, and first to your issue about the 160, we can't appropriate the 160. We'd have to have requests from the mayor asking from free cash or from wherever to then vote on it. So it's not us. I mean, we can make the recommendation if that's what the group wants, but that would be the process. We just can't say we'll grant the 160 back to you.
Right.
With that, I know everyone here just got the information. It was emailed. The committee didn't come in to say give us an answer today or tomorrow. Or it was to get in here to try and start getting you the information in order to then digest it, fire back questions, and then ultimately come up with a recommendation. So don't feel like you've been pushed to have an answer by 8:30, so you have 10 minutes. But no, in all honesty, that is the intent of this group. They've put a lot of work into this. To let you know, it was the annex, Central Supply, Metcalf was looked at, Lynch, buying Suffolk Street. Several buildings were reviewed, and then ultimately when we started looking at the annex, and through Marcos helping us out, we realized that it is a major problem. As we saw in the bond that we ultimately, we took some things out. We had to deny the bond the way it was, the $21 million. They need to put a new roof on it. So they have issues, and all it is right now is a patch job. So we have to do something with the building. That's why we kind of threw it into the mix. You can take the annex out and just look at the projects the way they are and cut that cost out. So don't feel like you have to adjust it, but really when you look at it, you have to look at the annex. It's a problem. It's not their problem. It just became part of the mix. So just that's why it's in here, not to confuse you. Once again, take a look at everything. If you have questions, the group is more than helpful to start addressing them. With that, are there any other questions for the group? Diastano and then Joe.
The committee met 4 times. Do you have minutes of those meetings, or we don't have anything?
Keep minutes, no.
Yeah, we never took minutes. So.
Okay.
Joe?
I agree, Todd, with what you're saying, but with one exception. I think we have to get an answer about the returning the money to the school department a lot quicker. And it might be easier if we separate it. This work has been done. We may have held them a little bit hostage, but the work has been done, and it's been done well. All these options, I mean, from one person, I've already eliminated 5 of them, but I'm very keen on 3 of them that could work. But that's only one city councilor out of 15, as you know. But you know, if the rent is due, and I didn't believe taking the 160 out of the budget was the way to do this, but the majority of councilors did. You know, the rent is due, and I think, you know, if it makes sense to consolidate while we're choosing and going forward with one of these options, that I don't disagree with that, unless we choose an option that's really quick, and it makes no sense to consolidate over there, because you're paying money that's not going to go anywhere, or it's going to be lost in a couple of years. But we have to address the 160, and I'm not sure if there's a way you can get the city council. Perhaps we can just ask the mayor to put forward something to get the school department through the year, and to include something in next year's budget.
Yep. No, we can do that, Joe. We can follow the order. He's actually right back there, so he's hearing us pretty loud and clear.
I'm here. He's never loud when he's with us, you know. He's only loud when he's got the TV cameras on him outside here.
So we absolutely can file the order, and we'll tell him. He knows, and that we can address right away. As far as the rest of the stuff, whether we recommend to them, you know, after we meet on the Tuesday, full Tuesday, to, you know, redo the lease and move to 2 floors instead of 4, we can say that, and then proceed to the next level, what have you. One thing that you did mention, Joe, and I have it here as my note, is with regards to MedCAF, as this process started to develop and we kept having meetings, you know, we looked at buildings first, then the cost of buildings, and then we did receive the good news from the doctor in the sense of we potentially could build 1 to 2 new buildings, which then led to, well, you could then possibly build a new building and, as John pointed out, move kids from MedCAF to that if that's the choice, and now MedCAF is open to then puts the office up there. So that was discussed, but once again, there's a lot of unknowns. Okay, but it was definitely discussed.
But we're a lot further off than we were 3 months ago.
Correct.
Thank you.
Peter?
I just want to thank the committee and Dr. Zweig for doing this, moving us along. I think since you came in here, the council, you know, made a motion to try to get this building and do something with these, either rent, you know, get out of the rent, or buy another building or move to another building. And, you know, I go along with my colleagues, Councilor McGivern, about trying to get the money funded for the rest of the year for the rent. I mean, that's an obligation you have. I wasn't for the cut out of that, and I think that was a cut made just to get things moving along about this building. And I love all the options. They're giving us a choice, and I still am going to have to really be hard pressed not to go along with putting everything in one building and buying Suffolk Street. So, but I know you don't want that right now. That we have some time to look at this, but I really feel that that is the best option, and it's the most cost-effective option that we have for the schools and for the annex.
Thank you. Yes, Linda?
If members of the committee want to give us feedback on the option they prefer, that would be good for us to get at some point also.
Option 3.
We'll meet on that, John.
I was putting that out as a general question for future thought. I didn't expect that you'd have an answer tonight.
If there's nothing else from the committee, for me, what we can do is we can file orders with regards to the 160, to the lease, to then potentially give a vote on whatever option to help them. But with regards to this order, I think it's been complied with.
Make a motion that the order's been complied with.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you very much for coming down.
Thank you for all this information.
Thank you.
Can we, Anthony, can we keep those packages for the other councilors?
Well, the email that he sent, I'll have Ryan forward to everybody.
Yeah, just.
I'm afraid. But thank you guys. Thank you for coming down.
Thanks.
Alex, which order was yours?
It's number 12, I think. It's under 12. It's under one person, but.
Okay. Number 12? That doesn't look like it.
No, I think they sent an email to us too, I think.
Chief Procurement Officer?
That's under that.
All right, so it is 12. Just want to make sure, because we'll take it up.
She's got the info. I think they
All right,
emailed it to
so
us.
make a motion to proceed out of order and take item number 12, because there's a time constraint. So
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It's an order that a financial transfer request of $5,273.87 from free cash to pay Chief Procurement Officer. Move from the table. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? So
I can volunteer to come up and give you a little background on this. I did send you a communication with the order, a copy of the memorandum of agreement, and a copy of the professional supervisor's current contract. So essentially, this order, I know it's only listed as pay for the chief procurement officer. That's because only that portion needs to be funded from free cash. The rest of this agreement can be funded by transfer from within other department line items, personnel services line items. So this agreement in and of itself, the total cost of implementation is about $14,000. This is an agreement that we made with the Professional Supervisors Association to add additional positions into the unit. The way this all came about, if you recall, around budget time earlier this year, there were 2 positions that were added to the professional supervisors. That would be the development specialist and the assistant director of economic development. That decision was made to add those positions to allow it to be funded by the city as opposed to be funded partially by HEDIC. At that time, the professional supervisors indicated that they wanted to do a review of other positions in the city. Instead of doing it piecemeal, they wanted to take a look at all the positions in the city and try to make a determination on any specific positions that would be appropriate in their unit. So we're not just picking and choosing over the course of time, we're kind of making a determination as to what collectively belongs in that unit. So I assisted the association, took a look at all of the other non-union positions in the city. There's a lot of positions in the city that we wouldn't agree to be part of a collective bargaining unit because they are confidential employees, or their departments essentially oversee the work of other departments, or they are privileged to personnel information or other collective bargaining trade secrets, essentially. But in reviewing the list, we did come to an agreement on 5 positions, 2 of which I believe were previously in the professional supervisors, but for some reason they left, and now we're looking to add those positions back in. So that would be the chief procurement officer, the director of public health, the animal control officer, the assistant building commissioner, and the assistant superintendent / city engineer. Sure. So these positions are, so the
sorry, she had a
I just
question.
didn't print it. I just wondered if we had a hard copy. I didn't print out my email.
I have one for you if you'd like it.
I would, thanks.
This is of the MOA.
It's hard to read it on my iPhone. I didn't bring my iPad. Thanks.
I'll take it. Thank you.
Anthony, I mean, it would be page 2, I think section 3.
So as I was saying, this agreement in particular is looking to add those 5 positions to the collective bargaining unit. and change the language of the contract to that effect. The cost of implementation is $14,000. That would be essentially, so with the professional supervisors, their wage tables are reflective of the salary study that was done a couple years ago at this point. We'd integrated those into their contract. So that would be bringing these employees up to the grades that they were in as part of the salary study that we were told that they should fit into. So it's associating them in those grades in the professional supervisor's contract.
Go ahead, do you stop?
Can you break it down, the $14,000, who's gonna get what?
I can. So the Director of Public Health would receive $7,271. This is in addition to their current salary. Okay. Animal Control Officer would receive $611. The Assistant Building Commissioner would receive $870. The Chief Procurement Officer, which is before you to take the money from free cash, that's $5,273. And the Assistant Superintendent / City Engineer position is currently vacant, so it wouldn't cost any money.
City engineer is vacant?
He did. Yeah. He resigned from employment.
Resigned? When?
It was recently. It was recently. Mm-hmm.
Good to find out this way.
Sorry.
Is there an issue or something happened?
All I know is he resigned.
Go ahead, Giustano. That's learning new stuff every day. Giustano, then Joe, Linda.
There's no additional money, just the $14,000 for this contract.
It's $14,000 for this MOA. Yes, for this. Yep. Right. There's no more. That's for this year. That's $14,000
for this year. But for next year, it'll change.
Well, of course, it's going to cost $14,000 again for next year.
Do they have the grades that go with this?
Yep. So it's in the contract. Did I? Do you have a copy of the contract? I can show it to you. Oh, I'm sorry. The actual grade numbers are in the MOA on the second page.
Second page.
Yeah, that's here, but I mean, that's not gonna help.
And then those correspond to the contract.
Joe first, then Linda. I'll come back to my question.
Sarah, the positions being added back into the professional union, we'll stop right there. Mm-hmm. Professional, whatever you want to call, are professionals. I don't call them a union. What right gives them or anyone to go into and out of a professional bargaining group?
So essentially, the city can recognize a group of individuals for the.
Can you define city?
The appointing authority, which would be the mayor, and the council has to approve collective bargaining agreements under Chapter 150E.
Well, we've never recognized this group as a collective bargaining unit.
Right, but you've approved their contracts that have come before you.
That was called hostage to get them raises.
And so that's what this is. I mean, they see themselves as an association. The mayor has recognized them as an association. They have mentioned possibly going to the DLR to petition for official recognition through them if we don't, work with them. I think the other important thing to mention is these are the professionals and supervisors in the city. This is a great group to work with. These are, honestly, they're the city employees that I work with very closely in my job. And they're easy to bargain with. They understand the specifics of their job. They understand that they are held to a higher standard. And it's with that we have a good working relationship with the association.
Which I understand. Still don't recognize them as a collective bargaining unit. Originally, they were all paid by ordinances that were adopted by the city council going back to the Board of Aldermen. And the forming of this group happened without any notification to the board and without any vote by this body whatsoever. Mm-hmm. With that being said, you gave us a copy of the contract, the memorandum of understanding, green. I'm still reading it on my iPhone. Takes time.
I can give you a copy. Would you like a copy?
I'm not going to read it tonight, but I would like a copy.
Okay.
What other changes are in the contract? There's cost of living increases?
So their agreement, I think it expires, let me just look. June 30th, 2018. I think they did receive a cost of living, they will receive a cost of living adjustment on July 1st, 2017. So these employees, if they're added to the unit, would receive a cost of living adjustment, yes.
Okay. And then is it safe to say the contract is up for negotiation July 1st?
July 1st, June 30th, 2018.
So the only differences will be what's before us this evening?
Except for the fact that starting July 1, 2017, they'll receive a 1.5% cost of living adjustment. The whole unit will.
No, I'm sorry, but is that new or that was already negotiated?
Nope, that's negotiated.
That's already been approved?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Okay, if I can have that copy sometime.
I'll give it to you right now.
Not later, later. Thanks.
Linda?
So in this memorandum of understanding, it appears to me that at least one person is or will be paying more than what the city budget has authorized. So are you saying that this will supersede the budget that the council approved?
Well, this is requesting money from free cash. I don't know which specific position are you referring to? The
Chief Procurement Officer.
Yep. So this is requesting money from free cash to fund that salary increase.
But as an example, the Chief Procurement Officer was budgeted at $54,644. So how much is that person making now?
It was $54,644. It's what was budgeted. That's what I have right now.
Is that what the person's making now?
That's to my knowledge.
All contracts are subject to the approval of the appropriation, or the contract is null and void.
I understand that aspect, but
the contract comes before us.
That's not the question I'm asking, though.
Are you asking what will the new salary be? Is that what you're
I'm asking what the current salary is.
My understanding with that specific position is, and that's why we're coming to ask for money from free cash, is there's no other money in the budget that could be moved. So what the council cut from that salary line item is what the employee is getting paid, because there's no other money available in the budget to be able to pay that person. That's why we're asking for the money from free cash.
So the person is being paid the salary at the $58,000 rate, and because the person's being paid at the higher rate, you're running out of money, right? Is that what you're
I don't know
saying?
the particulars of that. I don't know the specifics. I do know that $54,644 is what I had done my math off of, because that's what was in the budget.
Okay, thank you.
Linda, did you get your question answered?
I would like to know that information before we act on this.
All right, so what is your overall question?
My overall question is, and that's just an example, we approved a budget with certain lines for certain positions.
Yep.
And I'm not even, I don't understand really why this position would go into this unit, but, so that's a different question. Okay. But as an example, so I just want to know that whatever budget line these folks are in, with what we're doing, are we changing the budget, or are we living in the budget that we approved?
Well, if we approve for example, because I don't have the book in front of me. If we approve for $54,644, are you saying then if we approve this, it's going to go up to 60 or whatever the number is?
That's my understanding.
Yep, and it's raising the annual salary for the position. That's the request from free cash.
So what I'm talking about the rate.
Right.
Of pay versus the dollars that have been paid.
So you want the rate of pay.
I guess to frame it
in
a lawyerly way.
No. So can we get that to finance or response back to it?
I can certainly get you.
But my question really is does that affect all or any of the positions? You just asked me for an example. Right. So I gave you an example.
So the rate, usually you take the salary, and that would be, so essentially the increases, the $14,000 is what would be like distributed in the manner that I explained when I read the list. And that is increasing their salary for the year. So it's actually 827 hours of work.
I understand what we're talking about.
Okay.
I just want to know what the numbers are.
Okay.
Thank you.
Damien, did you have something?
Sure, really quick. So as the vice president of the PSA, an hour ago, the line item for that individual employee was set at $54,644 for the budgeted year. So what's being requested is to get it up to grade 12, which is the bottom, the absolute bottom of the range for that employee in the grade, which is $59,917, and there's your $5,273.
All right, so it's at the bottom of grade 12, which then, which then is how many blocks are in the grade again that can bump up each and every year?
We don't have any particular blocks. It's just a range. There's no steps for automatic. You have nothing automatic. It's whatever you are, and then there is cost of living adjustments if they are part of the contract.
Right, so it can go up each and every year within that grade. If you start from the bottom, it can go to the top of the grade. Isn't there a range between the two, or do we change that now in ordinance?
We have not adopted that.
Oh, you haven't? All right, so, sorry, I thought that was adopted.
This is
Okay.
per contract.
Discussion about a proposal.
Okay, I thought you guys took it up in ordinance. Okay.
I got it.
Okay, I got you.
Scale.
This is the scale is actually in the professional supervisor's contract. It's the ranges.
Okay, that's what I was looking for. Okay, thank you. Joe?
They're the current salaries based on DH-17, correct?
No, these are, we recognize these as union employees. They have a collective bargaining agreement, and in that agreement, their grades are actually on the GR schedule, I believe.
But
That's
what I'm
in the budget. It's DH.
trying to ask.
Oh, maybe it's not. It's not DH.
I mean, our former chief procurement officer worked in that job for 35-something years. The last 10-something years or more had no salary increase.
Yes. Oh, yes.
As
So
DH-17.
these employees, if subject to the MOA, are currently paid under the ordinances.
That's what the budget figure is.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Linda, do you have any more questions? I didn't mean to stop you. Okay. Any other questions? Mayor, did you have anything to say or?
Not particularly, just wanted to be available for questions if there was any specific questions about the proposals. I just want to reiterate what Sarah said about the group of employees. A lot of these folks have worked in the city for many years, very professional, oftentimes transcend mayoral administrations, and just are here to do the work. I want to thank Jeff and Damien for leading the group. But again, this is a great bunch of employees that get up every morning and want to work hard on behalf of the city. I know separately from this conversation, I've continued to advocate for the passage of the compensation study. And to Councilor McGivern's point, we do have around 48 non-union employees, be it department heads or assistants and other support staff within those departments that haven't seen COLAs or merit-based increases in upwards of 7 to 10 years at least. Councilor McGivern's point, our previous chief procurement officer didn't get a raise for multiple years. While that may be true, I know that we, with the support of the City Council, commissioned the outside objective analysis of our salaries to try to move people forward, both not just for employee morale, but basing our salaries on the market and what other cities and municipalities are doing. And so for us, one of our focuses is really making sure we appreciate our staff when they work hard. We don't think any employee should go years and years and years without a cost of living adjustment, particularly employees that are working and their colleagues are in unions that have seen substantial percentage increases over the last several years, 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And so for us, it's an issue of fairness and equity, and that's why we've based the negotiations in the PSA off of the objective salary study that was issued to the city originally. Particularly with the chief procurement officer, it's not so much about the individual in the position, but looking at the market-based compensation analysis. What should a starting salary be for a chief procurement officer, no matter who is in the position? And when we had the prior person in the position, we continued to push the compensation study that would have impacted this prior employee too. It wasn't about specifics of who's actually in the job. So I think passing the PSA is important, and I think again it's just a step to both compensate our employees for the work they do, but also just, again, publicly affirming our appreciation for what they do every day.
Linda, and then Joe, and then Peter.
And on that note, there are certain posted qualifications and experiential requirements for these positions that people in various positions have had more or less of. And we are awaiting a communication from personnel on one of the positions in that regard. And so when we're looking at the positions and the qualifications and the experience, that is a measure that we have to use with including and rating them as well. Thank you.
Joe?
We have to stop the bleeding. You know, we've lost Board of Health directors, building department directors. We've lost professional people that, city engineer, that are more than qualified and proven doing great jobs within the city of Holyoke. While we sit here with a compensation salary that we asked for, and we sit here with a, although I don't recognize this as a collective bargaining group, but a group of professional department heads who are the backbone of this city, many who have not had any type of increase in terms of merit increase, many who have not had in the non-union or non-professional members of that are in this group have not had any cost of living increase from 7 to 10 years, as the mayor pointed out. When are we going to stop the bleeding? We can't afford to lose more people. We say let's run the place like a city. Let's look at everybody's salary and give increases across the board accordingly to both cost of living and merit. We get a study, we don't vote on it. We get things like this and we question things. The bleeding has to stop. It's time to look at these people. It's affordability. It's not affordable not to pay people what they're worth. It'll cost us more money in the long run.
Great point, Councilor. I agree. We had that salary study probably about 2 years. We never acted on it. And, you know, I'm a person that's in the union, and I understand that as time goes on, you get increases, you get cost of living allowances, and these employees, many of these employees that I count on a daily basis to help me out with constituent issues and really work hard to do the job that they're supposed to be doing, and haven't gotten raises in many years. And comparable to other cities and what they're getting. You know, it's just, they're just not getting paid what they should be getting paid. And we've lost several employees, and we don't want to lose any more. So I'm going to go along with this increase with this MOA, and that these employees deserve more than what we're giving them, and they work hard every day. And I'm going to have to go along with Councilor McGivern and some of my other colleagues saying that this is something it's long overdue and should be paid out.
Yep.
This will be my last comment on this matter.
We don't have a 3 limit.
I know, but I will follow it anyway. My position on this issue is that we have people getting picked and chosen throughout the budget who get increases beyond the line that the city council approved, and now we come in with a memorandum of agreement to work around the budget. I'm not against people being paid, but I am against budgets being approved and then circumvented, and now we're sitting here pulling out of free cash because we're going outside the budget. We, as city councilors, take the heat for cutting the budget. It's the only role we have in doing the budget. So we take the heat for cutting the budget to live within the means of the taxpayers, and then shifts are made within lines and the money's paid out anyway in a number of cases, not all cases, and then we're asked to use the money to pay out the rest of the money after we're already being castigated for having cut the line. This is why we're debating a budget issue in committee at this time. So it's not about whether people are valuable or whether they're doing a good job from the perspective I'm at. We're in a very difficult situation citywide, and we're trying to pull things together but have accountability within the system. And for us to adopt a study that sets ranges with no controls within the range when we're seeing what's happening in the budget with $8,000–9,000 changes being made in salaries when in the budget there's a completely different number is problematic. But that's the context that we're in. I'm not against paying people a fair wage, but we all know not everybody in this room left because of money. So you can say that, but that's not always the case. So I don't want to belabor it further, but we are debating this issue in a number of ways and in a number of places. But it is in the greater context of a very tough budget that we're dealing with in every department. Thank you.
Alex?
Yeah, I would just say, I mean, the whole point of coming to the council tonight is that we're not circumventing the process. And so I'm hearing two different trains of thought. Number one, Councilor Bacon, you don't like to see transfers from other personnel line items to supplement the salary. Yet we're here tonight to ask for free cash to supplement the salary in an open and transparent process without circumventing it. And so, number one, I think it's important to make that point. Number two, one of the reasons we actually have to come back to particularly address the Chief Procurement Officer position is that the council cut about $3,000 or $4,000 from the salary that I, as mayor, hired this individual at. And so, number one, going back to that, and we complied with the ordinance, legally setting the salary at what we legally could when this person was hired. That was cut, and now we're coming back to the city council for a free cash request. And so there's nothing that is obscure about this process. This is the finance committee of the council and the process that we have to do. In terms of the compensation study, the Councilor McGivern is correct. Over 2.5 years now, we've had many employees, again, that have gone without cost of living adjustments or raises, and many of those employees continue to work for the city because they're passionate about the city, and for them it's really not about money. But as, again, the mayor of the city, I think it's important to be able to work with your department heads, your employees, to have those conversations about compensation or just the ability to. And what the compensation study does is allows a modern schedule and ranges for these positions. And Councilor Bacon, you said there wouldn't be controls. As part of the compensation study, one of the things that is incorporated in there is a provision, word for word, to the ordinance that you introduced about making sure that the mayor can't unilaterally do personnel line item transfers to increase a salary mid-year, that we'd have to go back to the council for approval. And so, as I said in ordinance last time I was here, I said, you know, your ordinance is something that we've already agreed to because it's part of the overall compensation study. So we set the salaries around the budget time, and then if we need any changes during the fiscal year, we come back to the council. So there certainly are controls. I know the council's worried about setting different ranges and the mayor unilaterally increasing it thousands of dollars, but there would be those checks and balances in controls within the ordinances that are embedded in the compensation study. And so that's a separate conversation that I hope to have at ordinance that you share, so we can have that conversation, because employees have been waiting, and employees, you know, currently do have the right to petition to become part of a union or an organization. And to Sarah's point, this group of employees in particular have been incredibly, you know, we've been able to work with them. They want to work with the city, and we want to make sure that we're compensating them based on what they should be compensated at.
Sarah, Joe, hold on one second. So we're potentially approving the $5,000 from free cash. The other $8,700 you said is coming from other transfers, personal line item transfers.
That's correct.
Is that going to come from the engineer's salary, or is it coming from where?
I can tell you where that's coming from. I can have the specifics on that. Okay, so there's some money available in the Board of Health budget. They were waiting for some time to hire a sanitarian, so there's some money available in one of the sanitarian positions. So that would be used for the health director. For the assistant building commissioner, I believe they've been trying to hire a property demolition supervisor. I don't know if they have hired anyone, but there's some money available in that line item. So $870 is coming from there. And for DPW, or no, those would be the only transfers. 1, 2. Correct. Yeah, because the money from the sanitarian would fund both positions in the Board of Health.
Okay. Yep. And then in section 7, it says, and I'm paraphrasing, said employee shall retain any bank of accrued but unused sick time and any vacation time carried over for previous years. So have we checked what they have saved and what that cost is and everything else, or?
Well, I can say that some of the employees are relatively new, so they wouldn't have a substantial bank of sick time. I know there's one employee who's been here for some time and probably has a substantial bank. I will say that the professional supervisors, when they converted, probably about 9 years ago at this point, they converted to an income-based repayment plan instead of, it's essentially a short-term disability plan instead of receiving 15 sick days a year. Those employees who were here when that was switched over, they got to keep their bank. So right now, under the current contract, there are several employees that have a bank of sick time, and they get 5 days a year, and they get the benefit of this short-term disability plan.
But how, of the employees, so it's not an astronomical number, it's a manageable number. Okay, that's my issue. Joe?
Just one more thought for the more philosophical debate here, Mr. Chairman. We are a city that we have a lot that we're responsible for as a board, as a city council for the city, but we are a city that provides services. And I think the reason any government comes together at a municipal level is for the quality of life services that citizens and taxpayers want, need, and want to be cost effective with their tax dollars, want us to do the right thing. When we ignore things, as I would refer to as fair compensation for professional people in these positions, we are doing a disservice to the taxpayers. And I'll just cite one example. When we bring in people, you know, to replace someone who's been here for a long time, a building inspector who had no experience in terms of running a department, no budgetary experience, no managerial experience, we trained him. He's now the building inspector for Long Meadow. Long Meadow let us train him, and now they're paying him a lot more money to do a job, probably with a lot less headaches than the job he had in Holyoke. I don't know where our city engineer led, or I don't know why he left the city of Holyoke, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was some truth or some similarities to him leaving. And regardless of how we look at it, and whether it's denial or not, we are just training people with talent, whether they have all the credentials when they're hired or not. When they leave here, they have the credentials to do that job. If we want to keep people like we used to, Dave Martins was, like I mentioned a minute ago, was some 30-something years with the city. Anytime he walked in this room, over the years, time in and time out, this body looked at him and said, David, you do one of the best jobs of any of our department heads. We trust you. We believe in you. Keep up the great work. And then for the end of his career, he goes 10-plus years without even a cost of living increase, which has an impact on his retirement, had an impact on his final years with the city after giving his heart and soul. I live in this city. I pay taxes. I want what is right for the people who work for the city. I want my quality of life to be protected, and we need to look at the true big picture in order to do that.
Sarah, I'm just going over top of page, so let's see. Section 2, Article 1 recognizes Section 3 of the contract shall be amended to reflect the following. Chief Procurement Office appointed for an additional term of 3 years and subsequent term of 4 years by mayor subsequent to confirmation by City Council. Are they changing that, or?
So that was at our last round of collective bargaining with the association. The city proposed term limits for the department heads that were part of the unit, because some of them did not have term limits. The ones that are by law, we have to follow. For example, Chief Procurement Officer is by law, so we have to follow that. But any department head in the unit who did not have a term limit, we agreed to a term limit of 5 years.
And that's what the union wanted? Or just?
It's collective bargaining, so.
I don't agree with it. All right. Yeah, go ahead.
If there's no other information to come before us, I'd like to make a motion to table till we can get the information we've requested.
I will second.
Okay. So is there any other questions prior to that? So the motion is to table with a request for information. Can you please remind us what information we were trying to get so I can put it in the order?
Rates of pay if they affect the budget that was in effect for any position. And somebody else asked some other questions. I don't remember what theirs were.
Just to clarify with that, you're just looking for, because all the, I'm pretty sure all the other positions are just, their rates of pay are reflective of
compared to the to the rates that we know, the DH rates.
I can give you that information right now. Just to try to, so I have that information. So the Board of Health Director currently makes $58,644. And the new salary that's proposed would be $65,915.
I'm not going to be able to sit here and go through that.
All right, can you just send that?
Sure.
Send that out.
Just send it. Yep, I can send it to you.
All right. So with that, there was a motion. It was seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
No.
3-1. Tabled. All right. Back to top of the agenda. Item number 3. That's make a motion to move item number 3. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Order that the CBA agreement between the City of Holyoke and the International Brotherhood of Police, Local 388. Take that one up.
So moved.
Is that this one?
Yeah. All right, if you come on in, take a seat. All right, so tell us a little about what's going on with the agreement, and we'll go from there with questions.
Okay, I believe you have a copy of the MOA.
Yep, we do.
It's been sent over. Last time we were together, when this was finance committee, I gave you a copy of our old contract, the one that expires. I believe you got a copy of the new contract, the way the wording can be written. Currently in front of you this evening for some transfers of funding into some of the items that were agreed upon between the city and the local 388. Excuse me. There were on the city side there were COLA increases for our patrolmen. We changed the longevity scale from dollar amounts to percent amounts. There were some wording changes, and on our side, we allowed the city to use the reserve officers more freely in the summer months. We eliminated a couple of positions from our contract, a dispatch position that wasn't being used by our members, also a overnight records position from 12 to 8.
Check your mics.
Oh, I'm sorry. There you go. You good?
All right, yeah, okay.
We also allowed the city to do away with what we call an RDO for court time, which is an 8-hour RDO, which means after a certain number of court appearances, we automatically get paid 8 hours. We did away with that, and we went to a straight 4-hour minimum for court. We allowed the city to limit the sick leave buyback for all new hires after January 1st of this year from 250 days down to 200 days. We also agreed to a random drug testing policy that we're currently working out the dynamics with the city on. And we also allowed the city to implement a fee on our road job rate that the city will collect to be used for, I believe it goes back into the general fund, but to be used to help further collect funds that aren't paid by certain vendors or so on.
You want to touch on that one a little bit?
Okay, I believe it's, I want to say it's Chapter 44, Section 53C, and it allows the city to put a 10% fee on our road job rate, which is currently $44 an hour. So it would allow the city to put a $4.40 addition to every hour that we work. I can't quote exactly what the law says as far as which vendors are responsible for that. I believe there are some vendors that are exempt because of their non-tax status or their city departments. But please don't quote me on any of that. I know that that's in there, but I don't know exactly how the wording goes.
Okay. All right. Is that it, or?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. If there's any questions on any specific items, or.
And with regards to the MOA, which items are yours? It would be item 9 for the holiday differential in clothing?
Correct.
All right, so you have item 9. Item 10.
You would have to tell me what it is, sir.
Free cash.
So what we have is, we haven't taken them up yet. I'm just making sure we address them all correctly, and that's why I had you contact Ryan.
Right.
Item 9 says financial transfer request $28,259 for longevity clothing holiday differential. Item 10 is $43,801 for longevity clothing holiday differential. Just those two?
Supervisor.
All right, supervisors. Patrolman. Okay, that's what we're looking for. So item 9 is for the supervisors, and item 10 is for the patrol. All right, open up for questions. Linda? And I'll just, Joe, you have a question? Go ahead, Joe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jim, on the longevity, if I heard you correctly, and I believe I'm looking at it, is you're changing the set dollar amounts to a percentage.
Correct.
Could you explain a percentage of a percentage of what?
It's I'm sorry, Joe. Go ahead.
Well, go ahead.
It's a percentage of our base pay. Is what the longevity is on. It's currently a dollar figure, and it'll be going to a percentage of our base pay.
And each member of the patrolmen's union would have the same base pay?
Our base pays are different in the sense that, and I don't believe that when Katie does our base pay, it involves our Quinn bill or our buck a week for those of us that have been around long enough to still have that. I believe it's just on the base, but please don't quote me on that. I'm not sure how Katie calculates that. But we have 5 steps in our patrolmen's union. So therefore, if you come in at step 1, your longevity would be different than somebody who's at the top step, which is step 5.
And do we have a dollar figure just on the longevity difference for this year?
Okay, just so specifically for longevity for the patrolman in the first year of the contract, it would be an increase of $11,000.
Sarah, we have a, relatively speaking, young force, right, Larry?
Yes.
Was there any thought given to the future impact of this on the contract?
And it is, it is something that we looked at. This was, honestly, like as Jim explained, we negotiated a change in the drug testing policy, which was a big change for the units, but it's something that the mayor really wanted to work towards. Because of that, we had to, of course, it's collective bargaining. We had to give them something in return. The longevity was a way to meet in the middle.
I will say, if I can interrupt, that currently other bargaining units around the area that are negotiating random drug policies are getting about a 5% increase in their pay. What we did when Sarah and I sat down and we hammered this all out was that we found some other ways to get some things without coming up with all that money. You know what I mean? And the longevity was one of those ways that we said maybe this can offset that. And you know, we obviously had a drug policy, but it was not the policy that the mayor was looking for in a random sense, which is going to save the city money over time from what they're currently doing, the way they currently did it this year.
And I appreciate that, and I understand where the city's coming from. I appreciate that. I've just seen these percentages over time. You know, they may not hurt, you know, the next 5 years, next 10 years, but down the road, this is a built-in increase that there'll be no control over in terms of, I'm coming just from a budget point of view. And I see some incredible, I wish the mayor was here, I see some incredible impacts by using these percentages on, you know, patrolmen's officers, 5% when you get up to their 30 years.
No, it is. It does.
It's a lot.
As a point of reference, and I'm sorry I missed a bit of your point, but the...
That's okay. Diosdado interrupted you. He's been a chattermouth all night, you know. It's just like he took over. I mean, you know, we brought you back to be quiet.
Yeah.
Joe, if I may, currently the 25, let me make sure I got them right. The 25 and 30 year longevities are currently 3% plus $200 and 4% plus $200. So, and the plus $200 came in a different negotiation after the 3 and the 4% were already in there. So you're actually going from 3% plus $200 up to 4% in this contract, and 4% plus $200 up to 5%. So the change there, while yes, I understand what you're saying, percentages are different, it isn't quite as dramatic as going from a set number up to that 5%. Because I do understand what you're saying about the numbers growing with increases in pay.
Well, the MOU and what was said earlier, I didn't realize that part of the current longevity is percentage.
Just the last two sections, the 25 and 30, were percentages. Before that, they're set numbers. I'm sorry. I apologize for not.
So say it again so we can.
So currently, the 10-year, 15-year, and 20-year marks are set numbers. They'll be going to percentages.
They're going to go to percentages.
Currently, the 25 and 30-year marks are percentages plus $200 and are going up to the next percentage. So from 3 to 4 and 4 to 5.
Is the 200 eliminated?
The 200 is eliminated, yes. So it's actually less than a % increase in those two.
This year.
This year, correct.
Okay. Sarah, is there any other changes that have a monetary impact that we are not going to see within this $28,000 transfer?
So aside from the longevity, the increase to clothing allowance, the increase to holiday differential for working on parade day, there are cost of living adjustments, which if you look at the MOA for the patrolman, it's section 2. For the supervisors, it's probably the same.
Well, the cost of living seems to be reasonable.
Yep.
By 2019, 2%.
Yep, so that's, it would, I can go through them if you'd like.
Yeah, we took a 0 in the first year.
So 0 in the first year, that was this year. Effective July 1, 2017, it's 1.5%. January 1st, 2018, 1.5%. July 1st, 2018, 2%, and January 1st, 2019, 2%. And again, that was, you know, we worked out the drug policy in regards to a lot of that.
Yeah, go ahead, Linda.
The final comment is I'm going to absorb the longevity issue, but I think we know our patrolmen and the job that they face, and certainly their contracts have not been anywhere near their superior officer contracts over the years. And I think there's some reasonable stuff in here and some well thought out stuff. The one thing nice about our police department is people don't leave our police department, is they want to come to it. Just had to add that in.
Linda?
Thank you. I just wanted to make a comment. I applaud your negotiating skills relative to your contract. I appreciate the fact that you are being more flexible relative to the use of other officers to buttress your complement of officers. I have to say, as a nurse, I'm kind of amazed that you're able to negotiate that kind of money to have a drug test, which is kind of for your own good too, right? But I'm not taking anything away from you.
I would love to tell you that we haven't had that conversation behind closed doors many a times.
And the nurses should take a lesson from you.
So just for clarification, that's why I brought up the dollar amounts. Item 10 is for $43,801. We're saying that's for the patrolman. And that would be Local 388. Am I saying it right?
Yes.
The 23,259 is for the supervisors.
Correct.
Do we have theirs in front of us?
No. I did email both. You should
But
have
that's what
gotten
I'm
a
looking for
packet
on
with-
the agenda.
Oh, it should be. It's definitely.
All
it's
I
item-
have is item 3.
Item number 9.
Well, no, that's my point. Where's the agreement for the supervisors, and where is it listed for the agenda purposes? Because
so-
we have before us the MOA for the patrolman. But
Right.
we don't have the MOA.
I had emailed that to you with the collective bargaining agreements. Instead of submitting a separate communication and the financial order, it's attached to the financial order. So the same thing with the professional supervisors that we just discussed. There was the MOA attached to the financial order, and with this for both patrolmen and I mean, I think Jim, you submitted your contract to the council.
But that's the whole thing. He submitted it to the council. We received the MOA so we can look at it.
Right.
Then we get the request for the funds to deal with the MOA.
Right.
We never got the MOA.
It was attached to the request for funds.
We're going to receive it as a separate order. We just got it as a fund package. You see,
Right.
there's two different ways to receive it.
Yes.
We didn't receive it the way we normally do. So my question is, all we would be is approving the funds for it. We haven't really dealt with the MOA itself.
I haven't been submitting the MOAs separately. The only ones that I submit separately, this is historically, so for the last couple of years of bargaining, the only ones that I've submitted separately is if they don't need a financial order. Like,
We've
for
always
example,
received them as the MOA, always.
Okay, I mean, I did email the MOA,
I
and it is,
understand that.
and the
That's why
MOA
I'm
is
going through the
attached to the financial
technicalities.
order. So, I mean, it could be approved in and of itself. With the same thing with the professional supervisors that we just discussed, I didn't submit a separate communication with that agreement. It was attached to the financial order.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah, no, and that's why I'm pointing these things out.
Okay.
That's different procedure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, one thing to point out, and if for the public who's watching, one thing we cannot do, we don't have the right to do, is negotiate the contract. Forbidden from doing that. All we can do is address the number that comes for us. So, in theory, we're just asking how you're getting to that number. We're not negotiating it. I want to make that clear for the record. With regards to the drug testing, is it going to be a random drug testing? Or how is it?
Like I said, we're still hammering out the details, but the general overview of the policy will be that 10% of our group will go up quarterly to the work connection, and they'll be randomly pulled by the work connection, and we'll be informed our next day at work if you're one of those. We have 90 members, so if you're one of those 9 people that gets pulled in the first quarter, you'll be told your next day that you go to work that you have to go up to the work connection, and you'll give a sample, and then your name gets put back into the pot, so that if you may get pulled in the second quarter, and you may get pulled in the third quarter, and somebody may not get pulled for 4 quarters. But
So 10% will
10%
get
of our
pulled,
body.
got to go up
Correct.
quarterly,
Correct.
get tested. Of the 10% that goes up, they're all tested?
Everybody's tested,
All right,
yes.
so all of the 10%. Hold on.
It's
hold on.
also, oh, sorry.
So then they go back into the pool, and another 10% is pulled For the next quarter.
Right, correct. The next quarter, another 10% will be pulled.
Which some of these could fall into. Chief, if you have anything to add, you can.
No, you're right on the back.
All right, yeah.
And this does save the city money because we're only testing 40% of the department each year. Currently, the chief has been budgeting to test 100% of the department.
Which is exactly where I was going. I always lead up to there. Get to the mic, please. Name and.
Bob Dixon, I'm the business agent for the police officers, both groups. I think it was back in 1998. There was no mention of drug testing except that we're going to drug test sometime. But then they put in their 1998 contract, 97, 98, a phrase come in there that we test one, we test all of them. So if you're going to do that under that old system that we had, you're going to test every guy in the department. So that's, you know, up to 100 people, 110 people. That's cost prohibitive, but what we've done is cut the numbers down, and still, because it's random now, like I say, 9 guys, so you're 36 or 40 people a year will get tested, sizable, and hopefully that we don't get the same people being tested time after time. We should get a better idea as to what is going on in the department as far as people using drugs or not using drugs, things like that. But the other system was an awful expensive one. We test one, we're going to test everybody. That didn't work very well.
It also doesn't remove the fact that if the supervisors or the chief were to suspect that somebody was using drugs, they can be sent up to be tested no matter what.
So they can.
If there's probable cause to believe that one of our members is using some kind of illegal substance, they can be sent up.
At any time.
At any
not
time.
Quarterly.
Correct.
So we were budgeted for everyone to be tested, but now it's only going to be 40%. So we're going to see a different allocation in the budget? Just making sure.
I also believe that through our negotiations, we were told that the cost to do it this way is far less than, not just as a whole, the 100% versus the 40%, but the agreement with the Work Connection to do this is coming in at a
you have
lower.
To remember, what was told to the public was we are going to test everybody. Read the articles.
Well, we were. If I can, you know, 100% of our body was tested, and 100% of our body passed that test.
No, I understand. We're not saying anyone's doing anything wrong.
I know. I'm just.
What you're saying to the public is one thing. We're going to test. We're going to budget to test everyone, but now we're having a different procedure. I just want to make sure on the record we understand. Correct. Going forward, what actually is truly happening.
Right. Well, I believe that going forward, when that money is asked for in that line item, that, you know, we would all have to change the wording as to how we explain what that money is for.
Yep.
It's still to do the same thing. It's just being used a little differently as far as how the money is used.
Linda.
Thank you. So since there will be the savings from the actual testing itself, was some of that, will that be transferred to help offset some of these increased costs, or are you just coming to the well?
I would love to tell you that I have any part of that, but I don't. I'd like to believe that the city, when they negotiated this, part of their negotiation strategy was that there was going to be other money, so we moved it over, and, you know, we came to an agreement that didn't steal all the city's money, but yet still got the patrolmen's union something. That,
no. I'm more asking about the transfer status, if it's in, and maybe Sarah knows, if it's the total cost or if this is reflective of a partial cost of the contract itself.
I believe, well, this is the total cost for year one of the contract, coming from free cash. I believe Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, but you budgeted to test the entire department this fiscal year? Okay,
so you won't.
So that money is, however, the new random system, we're going to negotiate an implementation date. There's a lot of steps that we have to take ahead of time to make sure we have the system down and everybody's ready to go before we start the quarterly testing.
Okay. I have to ask these questions to be consistent.
That's fine.
With regards to this new system, that hasn't been agreed to yet, or it's not in place yet, or the terms aren't official yet, or where are we?
90% has been agreed to. We met and we went over all the principal parts. We just I have to put it together.
Which then is, for this year, no testing will be done because we're starting a new system.
It depends when we can start the when we can do an implementation date. Also, I have to touch base with Work Connections because, you know, this is a lot for them to take on. They need to be ready as well to start, because they maintain the random pool of names. The department does not maintain the names. It's actually all done by Work Connections at Holyoke Medical Center. So they would maintain the pool, and then they would pick the names from the pool.
So, Chief, since you're here, with the thing still in negotiation, will there be any testing this year?
Well, if we ratify the contracts, I would go back to Work Connection and say, and 20% of the department in the last 6 months of the year.
But we're not finalized with the contract or the details, which then is we're still going back to Holyoke Medical to finalize things. All I'm asking is, will there be any testing this year, projection-wise, because we're not there yet. We're only 90%.
Right. I can't say yes definitively. We did agree to negotiate the date of implementation of the policy. I think we had talked about in the next year, but again, as to we need to start it probably in the beginning of the year or at the start of a fiscal year in order to do the quarterly. Honestly, the reason why the drug policy hasn't worked out completely is a lot my fault because of my workload, and I haven't been able to get to it. And I apologize for that because I have been, you know, we were meeting very regularly. But we will certainly get that done, and we will, you know, set an implementation date, and hopefully it will be before the end of certainly before the end of the calendar year or at the end of it. I'm not sure if it'll be before the end of the fiscal year.
Mike?
Yeah, thanks.
Councilor Sullivan, sorry. Mike.
I just want to make sure that, I think I'm asking the same question as Linda asked before, but I want to make sure in my mind, we're making financial concessions in exchange for union agreement to random drug testing. That's what's going on?
That's part of the agreement, yes, sir.
Okay, so, I mean, I've got a commercial driver's license. I'm subject to randoms, so I'm familiar with this system. That's how it works, and it really works better than trying to do 100% because nobody really ever knows when their number's up, and it can come up again. Theoretically, it can come up 3 times in a row. So, I mean, it's a great system. You know, another friend of mine works for Hood, and you know, commercial truck drivers and a lot of other professionals are out there, you know, it's just part of the job. You have to go with it. There's no salary or wage or benefit concessions. It's not only for the officer's safety, but it's for the public safety, and it's for their fellow workers' safety. I just don't understand why it's part of a financial concession.
It's not for us to negotiate.
And Mike, you're 100% right. And that's why I said earlier, we, unfortunately, in our position, we are not allowed to negotiate those terms. All we can do is, we can ask the questions why, now we have the answer. The reason for the number, some of the reasons, is they negotiated that if they're going to do this, they're going to get some type of pay for it. All we can say is yes or no to the request for free cash in order to then fund the contract. We can't say take that provision out and we'll approve it. We're not allowed to do that. Just so we're clear as to the rules before us. All we can say is yes or no to 43,000 and 28,000. That's it. But we now know the reason why, and we can tell the public why.
Okay, so when we originally requested drug testing, could the union have just refused? No, we're not going to do it.
We currently have a drug testing policy in our contract that I think it was explained that if they test one, they test all. Okay. The change in our contract to the new policy is something that was negotiated by the city and the union to come together. Like any other benefit in our contract, either good or bad or for the city or for us, it's a negotiation. If the city wants something, we negotiate. If we want something, the city negotiates. I don't want to get into, you know, what it's worth or what it's not worth, but, you know, I gave a long list of things that the union gave back to the city during our negotiation. We allowed, you know, the use of reserve officers, which is going to save the department money. We allowed the lowering of sick leave buyback for all new employees that hired after January 1st. That's going to, well, not right now, it's going to save the city money. We allowed the city to do away with 8-hour RDOs at court, save the city money. We allowed, you know, this was a negotiation that went back and forth. It certainly wasn't a one-sided thing where, you know, and believe me, like I said, behind closed doors, this conversation has been had. And, you know, we want our members at the Hoyoke Police Department to be drug-free as much as everybody else in the public wants us to be drug-free. And we've proven that we are. And, you know, nobody wants to go to work next to somebody who's not at their best, especially when you work in a dangerous job, whether you're a truck driver or you're a policeman or you're a fireman or, you know. So we want the same things that you want. And, you know, while I understand that it's, you know, these percentages and these numbers are better than we've probably done in a few years, but I'd like just everybody to understand that we've given back in this negotiation, that it wasn't just one-sided.
For the reserves, because you mentioned them working in the summer.
Yep.
What is there a limit on how much? Is there a total amount that the city will save?
I can't give you a number, Todd, but what I can tell you is that what'll happen is once the reserves are up and running, if they're scheduled during the summertime for, say, Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, and a full-time officer takes a day off or calls in sick or, you know, somehow is not there, the chief and the supervisors would be able to slide that reserve officer into that spot. So you wouldn't have to hire another full-time officer to work overtime.
Is it required to use the reserve, or if another officer can fill it, it can be assigned to the other officer?
Well, what the new wording says is that if once again, if the chief or his designee schedules the reserves through the summer on those weekends, which is his choice, you know, I mean, he tells them when to work, or they give him a schedule and they get told when to work, that they'll be scheduled to work, and then whatever happens, you know, if somebody were to take a day off or somebody were to call in sick, you know, he would be able to use those officers at a far lower rate than what he would have to pay a full-time policeman to work overtime.
Can we get a projection as to what savings that might represent over the summer hours? Or was that taken into factor at all?
I mean, I know that this past summer it was something that the chief had expressed. This was a request from the department. I can certainly discuss with the chief what the cost savings of that would be. I can tell you that I believe reserve officers make about, I think it's $15.99 an hour. $15.99 an hour. So that's much less than a regular officer would make. So we are saving money, especially an officer on overtime, on time and a half.
And would that apply to the supervisors as well, or is it just for the patrolmen?
Reserves wouldn't fill in for supervisors. Am I correct in that?
So it's just patrolmen. Correct. So the supervisors are still going to get their shift at their rate. Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
I just want to make a quick comment. I appreciate the flexibility and the kind of give and take that's going here. In my head, I can't figure out like what the net is, you know, because I think it's sort of a moving target in that regard. But I appreciate the fact that there is movement in both directions. Our chief may have a challenge with the budget limitations, having to live within another tight one. I mean, it's not looking any prettier, is it, than it was last year. So whatever increase goes into the base is going to squeeze something somewhere. But you did the negotiation and the mayor is signing off on it. So, I mean, we're trying to do our due diligence, but it's not our arena. So I appreciate that aspect of what you put forth to us today.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Peter?
No, just a comment. I also appreciate the work you did bargaining in good faith, you know, and not always that you got everything. There is some givebacks, and you listed several of them right here. And I think that's something that, you know, us as counselors have to look at in the future to, you know, to work with when we do look at the budget and how there can be some savings. But it is tough fiscal times, as you know, with everything. And we'll just have to see what happens down the road. But I really want to thank you, and I try to do it every day when I see an officer on the street. Thank you for the job they do, because I know sometimes you don't hear that enough. But you know, I say that to the chief, but he always states it's a men and women that really run the department, and I appreciate that.
we thank you.
And Sarah, can you get us the projected savings with regards to the sick leave buyback limitation for new officers, the court time reduction, as well as the reserves for summer, what the projected savings is? Or if you guys can help her get that, we'd want that.
We can work on those numbers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or with Bellamy, he's here. Again, late, sorry, Bellamy. All right, with that, is there any other questions or is there a motion? So with regards to it, so we're clear on it, the first item before us, and all that really is before us so far, is item 3, which is the Local 388 MOA. And can make a motion to
that with accept and
Second.
comply with accept the MOA. Yeah.
Motion is to accept it.
The agreement.
That was seconded. Let me get that one. All right, so second, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed, 3, 1 abstain. Mr. Lopez. Next is to take up, out of order, item number 9. I've already spoken about it.
So
it's
moved.
the actual funding. Actually, sorry, number 10. I apologize.
Right.
Number 10, it's the funding for it, so take it out of order. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed, remove it from the table. Item 10 for $43,801. All in favor? All
Aye.
opposed? Yep, this will be the funding for
Okay.
the patrolman union contract that we discussed. So is there a motion?
Motion for the financial transfer for the the Local 388, $43,801.
Motion is to approve. It was seconded. All is in favor?
Aye.
All is opposed? 1 abstain. Right, Councilor Lopez? Yes. Okay. And that was approved. 3-0, 1 abstain, 1 missing due to travel. All right, so item 9. Make a motion, move out of order.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Question I'd have on this is, since I didn't see the MOA, I know it was attached. I actually didn't notice that, so I didn't review it.
I
would
sent
like
it to you via
time
email.
to review it. I mean, we can make a motion. No, we can make a motion to approve it if there's an issue for the Tuesday meeting.
I can submit it as a communication to the Tuesday meeting, and if you approve this, then the council could receive it that night as well.
Yeah, I know.
They might not like to receive it that night, right?
Right. So, yeah, it's for the supervisor one. It's is it the same terms or different terms? That's what my
It's
whole.
the same terms. The only exception is the reserve use because they don't apply to
Right.
the supervisors. Let me just go over it very quickly. I have copies. I think I might have copies on me if you'd like a copy right now.
It's the same. It's the same. It's the same. Both sides.
Identical?
Monetary, everything's the same term. Drug testing.
Reserves.
You don't use reserves to substitute for this group. That's about the
I
only
know we
difference.
did get it on email, but.
Chairman, if I could ask a question while you're reading.
Linda and then Joe.
So is the effect of the longevity bonus on this, is that based on the base salary or all earned pay?
It's whatever the longevity was based on before. So currently right now, their longevity is based on a percentage. It's their base plus their training rate, correct? Bellamy, I'm looking at you. It was, we did the math. It was base plus training rate. So that's what we would base this on as well. So it would be a percentage of the base plus training.
What does that second part
so it's
mean?
not, it doesn't include all the other, like their, your Quinn bill. It wouldn't include that.
Okay.
It wouldn't, it's just the training. Or
And
the clothing.
overtime?
No, it wouldn't include.
Joe?
Sarah, is this agreement the same as the patrolmen's, where the 25 years or more and 30 years or more have a percentage?
Yep.
And what's the monetary amount with that percentage?
So the monetary amount now, it's the same as currently it's the same as the patrolmen's.
4 and 5, Joe.
So the monetary amounts are eliminated?
Right. Yeah. So so it wouldn't be a percentage plus 200, and the total cost of longevity just for the supervisors. I have that.
They're a little bit older than the patrolmen, you know. Some of them.
I think it's
Joe, you'll like section 6, holiday pay, amended. Holiday incorporated a stipend of $150 for working the St. Patrick's Day parade, which I don't disagree with, but then it says paragraph 14.7, while not recognized as a holiday. In Holyoke?
We had to add that protection in. Sorry, guys.
It's a holiday for us.
Sarah, do you have any Irish in your blood at all?
Maybe a little. I'm Polish. For the supervisors, the total cost of longevity is $17,000.
Thank you.
So what, Sarah, if you could do me a favor and have this send it to Ryan, just separately this, and then we'll have it sent out to all the counselors.
Sure.
With the understanding that, I mean, Tuesday, they can do whatever they want as a full body vote.
Yep. So
we can make a motion to approve it, and if anyone has hesitations, we can always send it back or table it if they have questions on it.
We did have an email.
Yeah.
And I did send that email that I sent to the committee with all of the items and all the attachments. I CC'd the entire council. So,
well, I want to send it out again,
just yes.
So we, yeah.
See what it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So, any other questions on this, or any comments, or a motion? This is item number 9.
Make a motion to approve the financial transfer of $28,259 for free cash to the supervisors union.
For $28,259.93. All right, motion. It was to approve and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Not this time. So all right. So you voted yes. Yep. Okay. Councilor Leahy is absent. So that was passed 4-0. The other one was 3-0 with 1 abstention. All right. All set? Okay. All right. Item number, where was it? Item number 11. Make a motion to remove from the table.
So moved.
All in favor? All
Aye.
opposed? Order that $65,000 from free cash to motor vehicles and repair. Chief, how are you? This one
Good evening, councilors.
is nothing new to us. So,
Yes,
what do you have?
the short version of it is I have 2 accounts, motor vehicle repairs and motor vehicle supplies, that are running a little bit low. We've been through the car issue to death, I think, and it drives up our cost. And I need another $65,000 for both of those accounts to get to the end of the year. To give you an example, in my motor vehicle repair account, I started the year with 53. I've spent 42 out of that. I have a current balance of 11. My projections, or my bookkeeper's projections, are we need another 15,000 to get to the end of the year. That's part of that 65 number. In the motor vehicle supplies account, I started the year with $60,000. We've actually had to transfer money in. I've spent 72, and we're projecting I'm going to need an additional 50 in there. So I don't know if this helps at all. Between both accounts, Last year, we spent $160,000.
160?
Last year.
Yeah.
This year, we're projecting with these numbers to spend 190.
And when you're saying 50 more for supplies,
Motor vehicle supplies.
which would be
Napa, interstate battery, tires, and
engine,
and
doors. All right, just yeah. The fleet is old. I mean, I've been fighting for these things for a while. We do have 6 coming to you.
And I appreciate that.
So this year you'll project to be about 190 spending to keep that fleet
running,
somewhat running. All right. I mean, we knew this would happen. If you don't pay for it, it dies. So I'll make a motion to approve it. Sorry, Joe. I'm sorry, Joe.
Chief, are we still using the mechanics, or are we still working with the DPW quote city garage with mechanics?
We have one mechanic from the DPW staff that is assigned to us that works our cars.
So the central department doesn't exist no more? It was before your time.
Is that a fair question?
I guess you understand that better than I do, Joe.
I think we understand. It's not for you. Don't worry. Thank you.
So the motion was to approve it. Is there a second?
Second.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's been approved, Chief.
Thank you, councilors. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Take up item number 4, move from the table. All
So
in
moved.
favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Order that there hereby be established and maintained for 2017 pursuant to Chapter 44, a vacant property revolving fund. And then the language is accompanying as to the revolving fund. We did take this up prior, and it was tabled for the request for more updates, of which they said they had those updates, so Paul is here. Come on in, take a seat.
Yeah.
No.
Would ask. Good evening, councilors.
Evening.
Hello.
I want you to give a little update, seeing how a little time has passed since this, and then we'll go forward from there.
Sure. So just to begin, it might make some sense to explain what the context of what a vacant building revolving fund looks to accomplish. So under state law and city ordinance, the city has the authority to take corrective action at a property if a property owner fails to do so. In the case of vacant properties, the property owner often fails to do so. So the city will go in, board up the property, clean it up, and those expenses can be, a bill will be sent out to the owner, and they may pay it, they may not. With vacant property owners, more likely than not, it falls on the may not side of things. So the law, both city ordinance and state law, allows for the city to recover those expenses as a lien on property, a lien that could eventually be added to the tax bill. So it's a very important mechanism to recover these expenses. And right now, because of the cost of recording fees for liens, it's something that's not exercised as often, and that's been changing over the last couple of years at the direction of the Board of Health, Brian Fitzgerald, and the Building Commissioner, Damien Cody. So I offer that context just so we understand, I guess, why a revolving fund is helpful, because a revolving fund would seek to receive the recovered costs of clean and liens, board and secure, as well as ticket fines and vacant building registration fees, so that those costs can then be reinvested into further code enforcement actions. So the proposed revolving fund seeks to accomplish 2 objectives. The first is to reach that practical code enforcement objective of being able to use upfront costs for code enforcement that we know that we can recover. And if we do recover those funds, be able to do more code enforcement activities. The second reason is to comply with their own ordinances. Section 1835 of the city ordinances requires vacant property owners to register their property and pay a registration fee. And the purpose of that registration fee by ordinance is to cover the administrative costs of monitoring and maintaining vacant properties. So if we're collecting those fees, and again, through the efforts of the Board of Health and Building Department, we've seen a great deal more success recovering those outstanding fees. If we're recovering them, we want to make sure that we're expending them for a lawful purpose rather than having them deposited in general revenue and float to oceans unknown. So that is sort of the background. I know at our last conversation in August, there was a question by Councilor McGivern regarding what the effect of establishing a revolving fund would have on general revenue. The city auditor, acting city auditor, Bellamy Schmidt, I believe provided those numbers in a September 7th memorandum, which outlined vacant building registration fees, liens and fines assessed by the Board of Health, or rather, I should say recovered by the Board of Health over the last 4 years, with an average of $13,200 for vacant building registration fees, $2,608 for liens, and $2,225 for fines, which is an average revenue collection of $18,033. I believe the expected annual deposits are listed at $50,000, and that is a reflection of the expectation that being able to record liens for these unpaid charges will increase the city's collection rate. And sorry, I would note just two topics that were discussed with the proposed language for the revolving fund. Item number 3 identifies the officer to expend funds as Brian Fitzgerald, and I believe we had talked about
and put that
right.
to be just the position.
Director, correct.
All right. With regards to that, is there an amended order, or will there be one with regards to that?
I don't think there's an amended order filed, but that could be prepared.
Because right now, it's the only order that we have is with his name on it, so that would have to be changed prior to. We can't amend anything.
No. This?
No. I mean, could we, Joe? I always thought we can't amend it because it is part of a financial request. I mean, we know we can't definitely amend a number, but can we fix the language?
I think so.
I would think so.
I'm not 100% sure, but I think so.
We're all set? Okay, so that'll be for the department only.
Do you want a motion?
Make a motion.
I'll offer a motion to change Brian Fitzgerald, eliminate the name, and replace it with the position. Is it Board of Health Director?
Health
Director?
Director of the Board of Health.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That's in.
Joe has some questions.
Joe, go ahead.
Okay. Now as amended or unamended.
As amended.
Paul, I asked the questions that you stated, and I think we kind of stopped the conversation at the last time we had this in front of us. But you outline the purpose of a revolving fund, but to me it's not serving the purpose of what a revolving fund should, or it's loosely serving the purpose of what a revolving fund does. I recognize that the money generated is coming from the items that we want to see regenerated and revolve around it and continue to do. But it kind of hit me is whether it's Brian or whether it's Damien, that's their job to do that. And we pay them to do that. So when the monies that we, either through the lien process or through charging the property owners, or if we even when we're lucky enough to, to find property owners that are still around, comes back into the general fund, it doesn't just go anywhere. I mean, it's there for a purpose, for the purpose of these departments, being part of what the city, doesn't want to do in terms of service, but is forced to do in terms of service because of negligent property owners, and we could talk about that forever. So to me, a revolving fund is, the original revolving fund, Diastalo is as old as I am, in your service maybe, or is like the ceramic program at the Council on Aging, where a person, is paid to instruct a class of, doing ceramics, and a individual wants to do that. They pay a fee that will, one, pay the salary of the person do it, and two, pay for the supplies. And to me, that just revolves, something that the city is kind of separate from the Council on Aging, kind of separate from what we now call the Senior Center. And that to me is why, one reason why you separate money from the general fund. But a lot of our departments, collect money. And I think it goes, maybe we should say it more often or recognize it more often, that after they collect it, it goes into the general fund. The tax collector, collects excise tax, among property tax too. But it doesn't just go anywhere, is what I'm trying to say. And not that I'm afraid of Brian Fitzgerald or Damian Cody, but as we're saying, we're not doing it with individuals, we're doing it with positions. Revolving funds, are always controlled usually by the person closest, or the department head that's closest to the situation. And I don't see a clear determination of prioritizing how the future monies are going to be spent. There's a lot of need, and I think sometimes, the priority is a moving target that needs to be, the mayor and the city council working with these individuals. And I think the revolving fund takes us out of that scenario.
Yeah, I appreciate all those observations, because I think it does add to the discussion. One of, just in my experience with code enforcement issues in the city, I believe the Board of Health is appropriated $10,000 a year for board and secure, something in that range. And throughout the course of the year, that $10,000 becomes sort of a fixed cap. And my job is, if the Board of Health goes out, so first, if the Board of Health goes out, does their job, boards up a property, records a statement of claim, for $10,000 to board up that property, that comes across my desk, and my job is to either go to court or some other mechanism to recover those expenses. If those expenses are recovered, right now my understanding is they would go into general revenue, and they could be perhaps reappropriated into the department, but it's an additional step that might not happen regularly and with administrative ease. The revolving fund would envision those funds coming back in and immediately coming back to the Board of Health to spend $10,000 on the next set of board ups. So it's something that's envisioned to maximize our code enforcement capacity and ensure that we are able to essentially do as much work within the fiscal year as the Board of Health and the law department, building department's capacity allows, rather than capping our scope of work at the budgeted figure.
And I get that, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate the job you do, Paul, and Brian and Damian. But if you say, let's do a revolving fund, and this revolving fund will pay for a portion of your salary, Brian's salary, Damian's salary for what they do in this area, and the costs on their departments, expenses on their departments, along with deciding where this money is recaptured is spent, that's fine. Mm-hmm. But that's not in front of us, and that's not going to happen. Right? So you're handcuffing, I'm sure we'll work with the three of you, but you're handcuffing a situation where it's not that, there should be more than $10,000 a year in that line item. There should be more than a lot of money in a lot of items that we do. But when we look at the big budget picture, we have to weigh things against and prioritize things in terms of what we have with the what do we call it, Linda? The big pie. You know, the ceiling limits what we have for revenue, and we do have to limit it. And the money we recapture is some money that's already been spent. And what the revolving fund says is, let's use the money we recaptured, that in some ways we've already spent it on salaries, costs, and so on, to do more. I'm not saying that's a proactive idea, but from a budgetary point of view, I think it kind of handcuffs us, especially in these lean years. That's my 2 cents. I'll be voting against it.
So, just give me an example. The money that we're collecting now, we don't have an account now. So where the money is, or where the money is going now?
I believe funds received for ticket fines, registration fees, and that sort are deposited as general revenue.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Catch-22 deals.
Yeah, it is.
Money's coming in.
Yeah.
We only allocated X amount.
Yeah.
So they go out and do the best they can with the money they have. Money comes in, goes back to general fund, which really where it should go. Then we can reallocate it again in the budget time. This is a pool of money to say, look, as it comes in, this is what we work to get. Now we want to go do more. The issue that comes up, and Joe is correct. I mean, I'm not always a fan of revolving accounts. They do work depending on them. My issue would be here it says limit of $50,000 each year that can be allocated out, but what can actually go in there can grow to. And as we can see, with some of the accounts, we try to take money from one account to get police cars. You're limited as to where you can take from an account and put elsewhere. General fund means you can allocate everywhere across the board. So that's what I mean by a catch-22. I want to give you more money, but at the same time, if we have a lot of money, I mean, we're very hard, Paul. I mean, you've come up with a lot of really good stuff for us. X amount goes in here. Now it's there. Could have used it somewhere else. I mean, not saying that this is not a worthy cause. I mean, we're trying to get rid of a lot of these bad headaches of buildings. So, I mean, is there a right answer to this or a wrong answer? No, it's a great idea. I just don't know about the overall amount that does come in is now locked in there. And are you actually going to be able to spend it all to address your current issue? I think you probably could.
I'd feel pretty confident being able to spend any amount of money that's available for code enforcement.
Thank you. I just have a technical question. So if we establish this fund, is the only way that we could get, taking your example, down the road further, and there was a big chunk of money in it, it's the only way we could get it out for other use to be to dissolve the revolving account and return it to the general fund? Or is there another way that money can be moved from a revolving fund?
Bellamy, we'd have to file an order on that, wouldn't we, to...
Out of a revolving? Okay.
If an order is filed. And then approved. Yeah.
Okay, so it seems then that if we create this revolving fund, we're really saying this is a priority for the city, and that would be the reason that we would do it, because we would say we haven't used this much money for that purpose in the past. We see it as a priority, even though the budget is tight, because I mean, it's tight. And then we're taking money out. To your point, that's discretionary.
Ask the good attorney how much time he spends on.
Too much. Not enough. Both.
We're in the budget for this a lot deeper than you think, because we're paying a portion of Paul's salary. Well, Paul's work is great, but we're sorry. The city is paying for more than $10,000 a year.
Oh, right.
Because we're paying people to do the job, which is fine. But the problem is we're being handcuffed because landlords, are notorious for taking advantage of cities. And courts don't help us because LLCs dummy up and become a new LLC the minute we get close, right?
Don't give them any ideas if they're watching at home, Counselor.
They know it. So there's like a handbook out there somewhere written in the Commonwealth.
That's how I can make my money, maybe. A how-to. I won't.
So, I mean, are there suggestions, amendments, or other thoughts for the revolving fund, or questions for Paul?
Do you have, I mean, any other city, how they handle this? I mean, I know it's through the budget process. I mean, why do we want to do it different?
It's actually a very good question. This is a practice that wasn't invented in the, I'd love to take credit for what I think would be a good idea. But it is something that arises from the practices in other cities. I believe some of you folks are familiar with Damian Cody, the building commissioner, has attended a couple conferences on blight, and he dragged us down to Baltimore this past September. And this was actually one of the topics at one of the seminars there, and it's something that other communities, Baltimore, I believe, Detroit, some of these similar communities, larger size communities, but similar issues have used as a tool. There are some good questions raised, and I actually, I profess not to be an expert at all on revolving funds. So I think that Councilor McGivern's questions are fruitful to the discussion. One of the points Councilor Bacon made, which I think might be helpful, is this idea that funds could be transferred. And I won't put words in your mouth, but one of the things, if there was a concern about the revenue loss from having a revolving fund set up, we do have the historical averages of what has come in the past. I'm not sure how this would be set up in terms of an order going forward, but if the practice were to say, okay, we're going to keep that historical trend going by having an annual transfer from the revolving fund to the general fund equal to the historical averages, or maybe even increasing, I think that just looking at these numbers, knowing what's come in so far this year, the receipts are going to be much higher. And that's a function of, I believe there was about $5,000 allocated to the law department for recording liens, and there were many registration fees and ticket fines and board up liens that were recorded. So I think some interesting, valid questions.
Paul, what about another way to attack it is in the budget process to say, on average you're giving us $5,000 a year in legal, $10,000 for Board of Health and wherever else. Grand total was $20,000. Can we raise it to $30,000 allocated according, and then see if that helps, or is it just better to go revolving fund?
Sure. So I think that it would go back to that question. First, with the vacant building registration fees, part of the purpose for a revolving fund is to really clarify and specify that the money that's coming in for those fees is being used to expend code enforcement costs. And I'll guarantee you the folks paying those fees are interested in how those funds are being used. In that I'm having some phone calls from folks who are receiving these liens, and they really want some answers to questions. And on paper, it could be that those revenue dollars are being appropriated subsequently, and that's, I think, a defensible position. But it would be nice to really point to a clear connection between that money coming in, the city's basis for levying it, and our expenditure for it. The second reason I think is more interesting, and that's if the council increased those costs to $30,000, and the next day we went out and demolished 405 Main Street or 285 Main Street, or any major safety hazard that the fire chief, the building commissioner, is continually focusing on and raising for this council and within City Hall. If we were able to expend those dollars on day one of the fiscal year and recover them a month later, you'd want to go back out and do it again. So the revolving fund, perhaps a little bit ambitiously, anticipates the capacity to anticipates the capacity to utilize code enforcement to the extent that our staff is able to, as opposed to the extent that a budgeted figure would allow.
So in the example of some of the cities that have implemented this over the years, did they find that they had the ability to document a more effective response and a decline in blight because they were able to either A, respond more quickly, or B, respond with a greater response?
I mean, that's a good question. I wouldn't be able to support an assertion that yes, it did. I think the hope would be that this sort of program, in conjunction with a lot of other things that this city is doing, would help those aims. I think the other aspect of it is it provides transparency and it provides illustrations of success. So if we're able to go back to the Board of Health and work on this project and bring in, this reservoir of money and do great projects, it boosts morale, it builds momentum for further success. So I think there's an aspect of it to that which I would argue would lead to those outcomes, and that's consistent with some of the other efforts that the city has achieved through interdepartmental collaboration. And
so from your point of view, it would be another tool in the toolbox as we're trying to become more aggressive, get these houses back in the hands of good use in the case of the single family.
Absolutely. And I think the transparency point, and when this was originally proposed, I got a little bit creative and had a broad expenditure line for administrative costs of monitoring and maintaining properties, and this committee accurately reoriented me towards a more defined scope, which I recognize the logic in doing that, because I think that, and again, deferring to Councilor McGivern, I completely recognize that this might be a different use of or a different theory of a revolving fund than is traditional. Exactly. So if there are other mechanisms to achieve what we're looking to accomplish, I think that's something that is worth considering. But I'll just, I had a good vantage point from the window over there. I see it snowing out there, and I know it's been a long night. So and as Sarah will also attest to, I have a tendency to talk.
Yeah, to the mic, Sandy, please.
Sometimes talk even over Sandy, which she usually has more intelligent things to say than me.
I have intelligent things to say. I just have a comment. Is this on?
Yeah.
Okay. We have been working with a group of department heads. It's called the Problem Properties. We meet every single month. Law Department, Damien, Fire Department, correct me if I've forgotten somebody.
Treasurer's Office.
Community Development, a bunch of department, Board of Health. And we sit down and we go over the properties that we have issues with, that we know they're absentee landlords, or they're people struggling to try to make ends meet and they just can't take care of their homes. As the treasurer, I'm obligated to go and foreclose on them. Damien, being codes and Board of Health, some of these people just get up and walk away from their home and they leave it abandoned. So now we have issues with people breaking in, trying to start little fires and stuff. So we have them on the fire watch. We have also we have a police officer there that also is at our meetings monthly. So with this, they have tossed around the fact to have a property manager I felt that's a good idea because it takes the burden off of the other department heads, but these department heads are doing such a great job of containing these abandoned buildings that I think that what he's proposing tonight, is a great idea. We have to spend money to get our city back on the rolls. Thank you.
So, if just to clarify, so you see this as a better tool than adding a position. It's adding a tool for the people who are doing the work to help it happen more easily, if I'm getting you.
You mentioned toolbox. This gives them the money to say, okay, we can go to this building, we can board it up, we can serve papers, and then we can give it to the treasurer's office, she can foreclose on it, then we give it to the city council, they give me a blessing, I have an auction, I get revenue back. So for me, a property manager would be awesome because they would take all the burden off of our department heads, but I think they're doing a great job, and I think if we gave them more money to go after, we would be in a better position.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just wanted to say that I think, I mean, it's no secret that I'm a fiscal conservative. On the other hand, I think when people that are doing the work come to us and say they need a different approach and different tools to try to get things done, and we're already seeing a good faith effort and the work happening, then I'm in favor of trying something different. You know, when we look back 20 years, the way we were doing it wasn't working. So we have some people coming in, and I don't think you're asking for unreasonable things, you know, a new position, et cetera. You're trying to say, we know we don't have the money, we want to try this. And I support trying something different. And I don't see where if we try it, and for some reason it doesn't work, that we're stuck with it forever and ever, right? So, like we've done a couple other things, we can try it, and if it has a good result for the city, we keep it. And if it doesn't, we don't have to keep it. So,
Joe?
Thank you.
Joe?
I don't disagree with what Sandy, Paul, or anyone is saying, or the work that's being done. As a matter of fact, I support that work. And before Sandy, before Paul, before Brian, before Damien, the city did similar work with a lot of frustration. The frustration is the money is not put in the budget to do the work that they know it's out there. And $10,000 is not enough. I agree. My point is, and the answer to Diostato's question is, this is a budgetary mechanism. It's not a mechanism that's any different than what they're doing. It's just how to pay for it. The money that comes in now is the same money that will come in whether we have a revolving fund or not. It becomes free cash. So we're just giving it to them. I'm not sure if they can get it the same year it comes in. Instead of taking it from free cash, we're just giving it to them up front. That's all you're doing. That doesn't prioritize how it's spent. And that's the point I'm trying to make. And it doesn't take into consideration the money that we're spending on salaries and benefits. If we're going to create a property manager position, that's fine. But that needs to be done by negotiation or by ordinance, and we have to take into account the salary, benefits, and so on. And it's just, to me, what they're doing is great. And I hate to say it's not that I don't want to spend the money. I think we should put more money in those line items. But it should be through the general budget, not through the revolving fund.
Hold on, Mike?
And then to add to Joe's point, I'd like to remind everybody we budgeted over, I forget how much, $50,000 just for one person. And I think it was well over that amount. It was for two people to go around boarding up buildings, tearing down buildings, etc. Those positions haven't been filled. That money is still sitting in the general fund. Also, we had $225,000 in CDBG money that we approved, the Citizens Advisory Council, DGR, everybody approved, and was taken and put in towards another park, another burden for the Parks and Recreation Department to maintain, where we've already got facilities, this pedestrian plaza. The money's there, it's just being wasted.
Thank you. We touched on this earlier in the meeting relative to the MOA for the other group. And one of the things that's happened with that money that we created those positions for is it's not filled, so now they want to use it for raises. This is the kind of thing I object to. To me, what this is doing is saying we're going to make a priority of our use of free cash by setting up a revolving fund. We're saying that after all the years of debate, after all the recommendations on community development block grant that didn't happen, after creating the demo position that has not been filled and now is being spent on other purposes, this fund will be set up to do this. I mean, out of the best of intentions, we approved new positions. They didn't happen, and they're not doing what we approved them for. That I find very problematic, and to be chastised about giving people more money out of positions that we created to help the city is offensive. So I'm really not warm to that. But this is saying if we set up a revolving fund, we would have taken our free cash to do this. We think this is a priority for the city, so we're setting up a revolving fund. We know the money that goes in it is going to be used for this. It's not going to get flipped around. It's not going to get taken and flipped into another job. It's going to do this, because that's what it says. So I kind of like that. After all the dancing around we've been doing all night tonight, this to me feels clean and straight with some accountability. So that's my take on it.
Yes, Tyler? I just want to, I don't agree with the order, but I think I'm willing to try it. If we set it up for a year and come back and see, get some idea back and see how this thing works, and then we can support that. I've been thinking about this. I want to try it. I want to see if you get the money in this account, but I want to see within a year to come back. Can we do that?
There's a simple answer to your question. Every revolving fund has to be re-upped every year. So you're absolutely right. After a year, Paul or someone would come back to you and say, will you renew this revolving fund? So you'll have the chance to review what happened and decide yay or nay going forward.
But I want vote. Yes, and I want to see a report. I mean, where the money's being spent and all that stuff. I mean, it's just to because I honestly believe that we should do this to the budget process. But I mean, this is going to work better.
Council, yeah, I actually appreciate that analysis, and as Bellamy has pointed out, it would need to be authorized annually. And I think, as was mentioned at our last discussion in August, there's some things that I would like to add to this down the road that I think are not ready to fly right now. And I would take that opportunity each year to say, look, this is an expense that one of the issues that my very kind and gracious boss has discussed with me is the cost of publication for vacant properties in housing court. It's about $600 to publish 3 times once a week in the Republican. That's an expense that I think this will facilitate the opportunity to say what are our expenses to do these things and what are we getting in return for them. If it's $600 to publish notice to get a property in receivership and rehabbed, I think that the city wants to expend those funds. But as has been noted multiple times tonight, budget finances are tight, and departments work the best as they can within those strict confines to achieve the results that the public demands. I think this revolving fund provides some flexibility, and I'll end on this, an incentive for the hardworking folks, for Brian and for Sean and the Board of Health that have been incredible in working with the law department to achieve these objectives. It provides incentive for us to do more so that we can recover more and reinvest that back in the work that we do. So it's I think a good tool on a number of levels, and I appreciate, I sound more like an advocate, I guess, than the city's attorney, Sarah. But we'll deal with her performance review.
Any other comments?
I'd like to offer a motion that we adopt the revolving fund, if that's the proper language.
Motion to approve. Second. Seconded. questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Pass 4-0.
Thank you, counselors.
Thank
Have
you.
a good evening.
If I'm still around, I will follow that order. No, I'm just kidding. No.
All right, next one is item number 5, motion removed from the table. Order that there hereby be authorized to establish a fund for the government TV access channel. All in favor, all opposed. All right, so this one's not new to us. We've taken it up on 7/27, 8/30. In both cases, tabled it because there was no one here, so.
And once again, we're talking to ourselves.
No, we have Sandy and
Sandy?
Bellmere here. Oh, so you didn't let me finish. I'm
No,
getting there.
I'm saying from the CATV, not them.
Well, they're here to help try and answer
All right.
some of the questions I have.
I didn't mean them. I meant the other crew.
I don't know too much about this. Maybe you know more.
Well, prior to this, it was nobody.
No
So, Sandy,
offense.
if you wanna
I
come
meant
in
the
and-
CATV people.
Oh, fair enough.
So here, in essence, they're requesting a revolving fund.
Renewal of a revolving fund that has existed for many years.
Or that they're hereby authorized to establish and maintain in accordance for a revolving fund. So, it doesn't say to
But
set up
that's
a new one, but go on.
But that is the language that's used every year. This
Okay.
is just renewal of an old revolving fund.
So it's an old one.
Yes.
And how old is it?
I don't know. I didn't look to see that.
And
we may have an expert over here who could tell us, but.
Well, Bellamy, you just told us. Sorry. Bellamy, you just told us all revolving funds are renewed every year, so it can't be more than a year old.
Yeah.
Well, this one isn't.
All revolving funds are not renewed every year, and that's part of the joke. So
This one was not renewed last year, so right now it's dead.
Placed in the table to invite in the new PEG access board
Right.
to present for the first time in public before the city council who they are and what they are.
Right.
Right. They're not here. They're not here.
Right.
Were they invited tonight?
That's
they've
Did
been
anybody
invited
actually
on-
invite them?
They've been invited on 7/27/2016, 8/30/2016, and 1/23/2017.
Oh, okay, so they weren't. I have no idea. I've never met them, so.
Of which
Who has?
I know
I
there's a-
asked Ryan to at least ask you as well to come in if you guys had anything on this.
I know there is that the company called PEG Access has been renamed, and I know that it has a new board of directors that is no longer the president of the city council and the mayor.
Don't tell the president of the city council that one.
Well, he voted to do this, so all he has to do is read the minutes.
And
of
not
the
in his
meeting.
words, not what he told me last week.
So who is the new board of directors?
I don't know any of them. So
You get a copy of that, or?
I can email it to you. You want me to read it right now?
Yeah,
I
so
can
yeah,
send you
who's
that.
on there?
These are from the Articles of Incorporation. Peter Williams, James Bickford.
Wait, hold on. Peter Williams, address?
435 Pleasant Street.
Okay, next.
Jennifer Miskowski, 3 St. James Ave.
Okay.
So that was the president and then the clerk. And then the directors are Peter Williams, again, those three again. Dennis Luzaranja. Luzariaga.
Yeah.
There we go. 6 Pinehurst Road. Mark Watton, 128 Allen Street. And Mike Hines, 14 County Road. And I'm not sure if the vacant position has been filled.
Who was the fourth one after Dennis?
Mark Lawton.
Mark Watton, Wotton.
And how were they appointed? How were they?
So, okay, so this was Attorney Cunha had handled this, and I'm not completely up to date with it, but I did pull some things from the file, and it's my understanding that, they formed a group, and the PEG Access Corporation essentially changed the name to Holyoke Community Media, and appointed Holyoke Community Media. That's the name. And appointed these individuals as the board of directors.
Who appointed them?
Appointed him?
So it would be the mayor, the solicitor and the city council president voted to appoint them as the board of directors of Holyoke Community Media, which used to be PEG Access. It's just they changed the name of the nonprofit corporation.
Which of our city solicitors voted?
I believe, honestly, the two names that are written down, the two signatures on the articles of amendment are the mayor and Councilor Jourdain. But I believe Attorney Cunha had been involved in this.
Okay.
But it's
Attorney
only a
Cunha
majority
was
vote.
our acting city solicitor.
Yeah, but it's only a majority vote, so with the two of them, it would have been effective.
So PEG Access, which was the mayor, president of the city council, and the city solicitor, turned over everything to Holyoke Community Media and then approved the appointment of all the members.
Correct.
Okay, just
Now, if I may.
Sure. Go ahead, Linda.
I remember discussion at the city council on this because it came up as a done deal. And I remember, I believe it was Councilor McGivern who objected, saying, how come it never came back to the council? Because the council founded PEG Access, if I'm recalling that discussion correctly. But anyway, that was put forth to the city council as a fait accompli. And then that is the last we ever heard of anything. The end. And that was what?
Well, it was just last year. In fairness to, if I could, Mr. Chairman, I think.
Sure. Go ahead, Joe.
Well, I lose time.
Goes fast.
No, Councilor Bacon's correct. In fairness to our president, he did, not through discussion, through the president's report, inform us of the negotiations that were going on. The MOU, though, my understanding, was only recently re-signed or recently completely negotiated.
September 23rd, 2016.
And that was part of the problem, is that this group was diligently working on their end to get the right MOU that they felt they could work with. And that I did not know until, and the reason I know that is because this group, all three names that were mentioned, came to HEDIC recently, which I let the city council know at our last meeting, to discuss the purchase of a building. And I got some answers there, but as I pointed out to the group, HEDIC, there's a good reason why HEDIC would sell the building, but there's a lot more issues that we need to have a discussion with this group, and it's about oversight and accountability.
Right.
Okay, there's the mayor negotiated a contract that increased the group that Bellamy was referring to, the president of the city council and the city solicitor. I was the original of the three, Mayor Sullivan, Karen Bertoni from the beginning, and then as city solicitors changed and as presidents of the board changed, you know, the people actually changed. But that format was a corporation that was set up, modified after what the city of Greenfield did with their PEG Access money. A portion of the PEG Access money, as you see in what's before us, goes to public schools. That's Mike Hines and the equipment that's there, the equipment they somewhat take a hand in for our own broadcast here, and somewhat for, you know, when Brian Manajak and whoever comes down to run the cameras, and the new duties of our new administrative assistant being a camera operator this evening, you know, is all part of where some of this money goes. But the increase in the amount of money is significant, where I believe it was 60,000 a year or 60,000 twice a year was coming in, is now close to 5 times that. And they have over $1 million in their account.
Do we have the amount that's in the account right now?
I think it's $600,000 a year that comes in.
Unfortunately, it's not a city account, so we have no idea.
Then why do we have a revolving fund?
And that's for us to get to. Well, hold on, slow down.
Can I finish what I'm saying?
I just want one other thing, Joe, is who's doing the accounting? Those are two.
That's the question. No one is.
The auditor doesn't like this either, but that is not city money. It goes to.
All right, I'm sorry. I thought you were going to have the answer.
No, that's where I'm trying to get to. This is not a bad group. This is a good group of people with a wonderful vision. We did actually hear their vision a couple of years ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. It's the question of this transfer, the amount of money. We don't negotiate. Only the mayor could have done that. The mayor chose to negotiate more. It's not the cable company giving us money. It's we as ratepayers paying more. Yeah. That's fine. That's it. That's the way it works. The way it can be used, to me, so far, you know, the way it's been used is just about all positive. But this group got so big, so quick, so fast, and we had no say over it, which I objected to. I'm assuming that Attorney Carroll's not going to be any more cooperative with my objection than Attorney Cunha was, but that's another story.
But the auditor supports your objection, by the way.
Thank you. This group told HEDIC, okay, now they're just negotiating for sale of a building. They want to have the accountability and the oversight, you know, placed into their bylaws themselves. They understand that because they're about the community running a media center with, you know, sensitivity to what government is about, but not being run by government. And there's, we can talk plus and minuses about that forever, but there certainly are pluses there. And I don't have an issue with that. I have an issue of establishing a revolving fund without knowing what the accountability is. That has to be independent. The city's budget, Sandy can tell us, Bellamy can tell us, we have independent auditing firms that come in on an annual basis and look at the books. We have the Commonwealth of Massachusetts on an annual basis will look at the books. You know, there are checks and balances that I don't see in place, and I think the city wants them, I think this group wants them, but no one knows how to do it.
All right, well, so we're not sure who's doing the accounting. It's not us. We're not sure the total amount in the account, but we know there's an influx coming in from the ratepayers this year. Another amount's coming in, from what Kevin told us.
Yes. It's an I think it comes in twice a year, but it's an annual percentage.
So that's coming in. I guess my question is, are any of these board members getting a salary or any type of compensation for their work?
Not the board members that I'm aware of, but eventually they are proposing to hire the spokesperson for the group. The president is actually runs the it's very similar, but the media of Northampton, the city of Northampton, and they just. I can't think of what they call it up there, but they just received some type of an award as the #1 in either Western Mass or Massachusetts. So I, just let them know that shortly they'll be #2 once we open ours, but that's okay. But not without accountability and not without oversight. And that's why I think everybody would like to meet this group. That's what I thought we were doing this evening.
Find out who the group is for the first time. Sandy?
Just to reiterate what he had said about the school, Mike Hines, I believe, gets paid out of this $150,000. It was established as $100,000, but I think the percentage went up a little bit because I know at the school they have 2 directors, and I don't know who they are, but I know the principal at the high school hired a second media person like Mike Hines.
Yep, and that's actually, Sandy's correct, but that's the existing contract. That's been like that since day one. That the money, and I'm told, I'm not sure if Bellamy can back this up, but I'm told that the amount of money going to the schools is supposed to remain the same until some things can be absorbed into the new media center, if any. But there's an importance to that too, because part of that is part of their curriculum, and it is part of the school budget. Part of it is what the other monies that they do that go beyond what the schools need and do. But Sandy's correct. Part of that money to the schools has been for salary.
Are they a charitable corporation?
I think they're just a nonprofit. I don't think they're charitable.
But if they're nonprofit, don't they still have to file a 1099?
I know they're a 501c3.
Okay, that's charitable. So they have to file a 1099. Yeah. So that should be on file, so we should be able to get a copy of that.
Okay. Before the change of the board, Dave Morton was the accountant for the PEG Access, and he took care of all that filing and everything for the 3-person board.
Right, but now that they're a corporation?
Well, both boards were corporations. Oh. That's how we set it up. Okay. But the original 3-person corporation was set up, and Attorney Carroll might back me up on this one because Attorney Cunha wouldn't, was set up by not just a vote of this council, but it was proposed by the mayor and needed the mayor's signature also. That time was Mayor Sullivan.
I wasn't here during that one.
But I'm just saying, if we want more information on the finances, it would be available through that filing, which should be there.
The account still the same?
We don't know.
The numbers aren't.
Well, I know the numbers aren't, but it's...
Oh, I don't. I have no idea. But I don't sit on the board no more, so I really don't know. You know, I don't know the ones.
Yeah.
Anyone? Do you guys know or no?
I don't know. I mean, I would, because they're a separate nonprofit, and I mean, it was always a separate nonprofit, but now they have their own board of directors. I suggest if inviting them in to have them give information about what they're working on, and maybe agree to like annual or biannual updates. In particular, to the order that you're discussing right now, is my understanding that this revolving fund is allowing the city to receive the money that the city gets to control. So of the whole amount, there's a portion of it that's going to come into an account that the city can use for its purposes. This is allowing the city to do that.
Can we negotiate a higher amount?
I think it's already in the contract here. Forgive me because I don't know the specifics, but I'm just reading from what's here. It says 10% goes into an account that Holyoke Community Media is going to set up, or the city reserves the right to request the balance of the account be transferred to the city's cable television, public education, and governmental access special revenue fund.
The balance of the whole account?
Sure. Of that 10%. So the 10%.
10%. That's a lot of money now.
And then it says 15% goes to the public schools.
Which is this?
And that's what this is?
Yeah,
is this the 15%?
Well, this is the public school. This is
okay.
to fund the public schools fund the public access channel. So,
okay, so that is the 15%. So this is the account to receive
just for the public schools.
So
to receive
just
the
for the public schools,
15%.
yeah.
No, it's
15.
just this would be the 15% so the schools can keep doing what they're doing over there.
Okay, and what is the 10?
The 10% is kept in an account and can only be used for purposes solely as directed by the issuing authority. And then it says that the city reserves the right to request the balance of that be transferred into a special fund for television, public education, and governmental access. And I don't know.
Fund of the city.
Yes, a fund of the city. So I have to do some more digging and figure. This is the actual agreement with Holyoke Community Media.
Yeah.
Yes, I can get you a copy of it.
All right, so we need the copy of all members, copy of agreement.
Figure this out yet?
To me, I'll just send when I get the copy of the board members, we have Ryan reach out to the prior accountant for PEG access and see if things have been told.
I'm sure. Well, I'm sure. But, Sarah, are you the acting city solicitor?
Yes.
So Sarah can just call him and say, I'm the acting city solicitor. We need this.
You call
your last report, David.
See if he's still the accountant or if he's...
Who was the former accountant again?
Dave Morton.
Dave Morton.
On Northampton Street here in Holyoke.
Okay. Okay.
If he's still the accountant?
Mm-hmm.
Or if he's not, where it went? Or who's the accountant, or who's who? Yeah, what's on second, third base?
5 years since I sat there now. I'm just going by what it was.
We have to go 5 years back, we're going to get the answer. All right, so, yeah, go ahead.
Can I ask a question, though? Just because here we are with percentages again. There was always a set figure for the public schools. But now we're saying it's 15% of everything that comes in?
I believe so. This is the new contract.
And that
says of PEG access funding payment, of the payment that is received. Yeah.
That's going to pay for the rent for Suffolk Street plus.
Deny the revolving account, put it in the general account, and good job.
We'll transfer it right out, just like we figured out.
So for me, I'm sorry.
No, I just want to find out if there's the contract have an expiration day or is forever.
I mean, this is.
There's supposed to be a clause that can be dissolved by the city with reasonable notice and.
Yeah, I'd have to look at it more closely. I honestly kind of just grabbed the files.
A new mayor could actually dissolve it, but I don't know if it doesn't happen overnight.
I'll send out a copy of it.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So, seeing how there's somewhat new information on our third try.
Thank you.
I just think we have to meet with this group and
That's what I'm going to say, is make a motion to table with a request for the contract, the list of the board of directors, all the members,
and
then bring them back in.
how do we get independent accountability of the
what we're gonna
monies?
have to ask.
That's what we need to know.
Right. Well, we don't have that before, so I have to file an order on that, but this still keeps it going. And then to find out who the accountant is.
Just to add a bit of candor, I don't even see the need for this fund except to get them to the table, because basically the PEG, whatever this group is, they can pay money to the schools to do this without our putting it into a fund. The schools, that's what the schools are doing this year. They're getting a check from somewhere and taking it in and paying for it. It's just that this gave us transparency, gave you transparency, because it was in a fund. So whether we need this or not, that's up to you. But
Bellamy, it's not that transparent if we don't even know how much money's in there.
Well, we know how much money's in there. We just don't know where it comes from.
I thought you said you didn't know how much money was in there.
I know how much was deposited each year and how much was spent, but that's all I can tell you. But no, that's in this fund, not in the the 501c3. I'm talking about in the city's fund that receives money for the purpose of paying for the school access channel.
But this fund is now getting 15% of the money, of the total.
No,
money.
because this fund doesn't exist anymore.
Of the MOU.
But this fund doesn't exist anymore. You didn't authorize it, so it's not coming into this fund anymore.
Maybe we should pass the fund and take the 15%. I don't know.
There you go. Sorry.
And then give it up to go to the general account, Joe?
You can't.
But here's the thing.
Good thinking, but
we're in a position of not even knowing what the 15% is.
So what we'll do is, I'll make a motion to table it with those requests, and then we'll have this up for a fourth time.
Right.
To actually meet everybody.
I'll second that.
Perseverance is a gift. Second.
So that was second. All's in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you very much for. I mean, this was actually really good. We
We're only halfway done. Well, get out.
It's our third crack. Yeah. Let's see here.
Oh, that's a good one. That's like, oh, good, a quick one.
Item 6. Make a motion to move to the table. All in favor, all opposed. Make a motion to deny. Because you can't give leave to withdraw. You have to deny it. So motion is deny simply because it's a request for $270,210.07, which is for claims and damages, which was
the other thing.
Yeah. So for the Essex issue that we keep paying out on, so that was approved already. So that's been paid for. So this is in essence housekeeping. Mm-hmm. So the motion is to deny because it's housekeeping. Mm-hmm. All is in favor?
Aye.
All is opposed? Well, actually, was there a second?
Second.
Okay. So and it was 4-0 to deny. Now,
motion to take up item number
7 is an order that the city council paid $20,000 from free cash to Jose Bo. He always, is that saying right? Because he always corrects us. Bo, for damages incurred at 392 High Street in conjunction with the Essex House collapse. Move from the table. All's in favor. All's opposed.
Sure. So we've discussed this issue at length with the claims from the Essex House, and this is the agreement with Mr. Bowe it's for $20,000. By law, we were required to pay him relocation assistance. He had a business, the Salsa Renge restaurant, that had to close its doors. We weren't able to relocate the restaurant. It's very hard to say, and well, the building was an emergency evacuation, so he wasn't able to go in and remove all those goods. But you know, he lost food, he lost business for that period of time. It wasn't something where we could say, just pick up your business and move to this new location. So because of that, we agreed to pay, the mayor agreed to pay him $20,000, which is the maximum for the expenses under the Relocation Act. So this is a resolution of all his claims and just like similar to the agreement that we saw for Ms. Farrar and the 394 High Street.
So, any questions before me?
So Sarah, he wasn't open for how long? Do you know?
Yes, I have that information.
Because I know I talked to Kevin. He's not here, but he has a lot of questions about this.
So that premises was, everyone was evacuated from the period of December 11th, 2014 to January 21st, 2015.
So this is for the loss of business and the loss of product, food, and that Correct. Is what you're looking at?
Yep, and in other instances, we were able to relocate. The like, for example, there was a church that was renting space, and we were able to move them. We paid for the cost of moving them. Unfortunately, with a business, we can't move them. So.
Well, let me ask you another question. So the 20,000 is basically he was closed and he lost some food, and any damage inside his restaurant or anything like that?
Well, he's not the owner of the building. He was just renting. So it would just be for, these are just relocation expenses that are owed to him under the law. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm ready to vote.
Joe?
Sir, who was he renting from?
Ada De Jesus.
Ada, the owner, yeah.
The owner, right?
That's the owner?
Yep.
Okay. And I heard you say max under the law?
Yep.
But what, was there an effort to find out what his true loss was, or?
Yep, so, so they have the option of either receive, so under the Relocation Act, which is federal regulation, they can get paid for their actual and reasonable moving expenses and related expenses and reestablishment expenses, or they can take a fixed payment. So the way that this was done was essentially they give us a list of what they're claiming, and we offer the fixed payment because what they're claiming exceeds the fixed payment. If we had to pay actual and fixed expenses, then we'd be in the situation with MD Beauty Salon, for example, where we were paying the rent, we were paying the cost of signage, we were paying the cost of moving, and those specific fees. With this individual, we just agreed to pay the $20,000 because his claims exceeded that limit, and he agreed to it.
And does it make sense for both parties?
Yes.
In your, okay. And I'm going to ask this not because I care, but someone's going to ask it at the next city council meeting is, did Mr. Bull have any insurance? Did he collect any insurance for any of his loss of income?
I don't believe he had business insurance or any type of insurance for his loss of profits. Okay. I don't believe so.
Thank you.
Linda?
But if he did, he could have still filed an insurance claim and still sought relocation from the city as two separate things, right? Even if he did.
He could have, but we would have known because as part of this is all governed under the Relocation Act.
But I'm just saying he would have a right to.
Yes.
Like if the insurance was for one thing and the relocation laws for another thing.
Yes.
It wouldn't have been anything wrong for him to do it. He could have gone
he absolutely
both paths.
Mm-hmm.
He just would have got more if his losses were greater, as he listed, I guess.
Correct, right. Yeah. And understand that we had to hire it's called a relocation agent. It's required that we hired this individual, and they had all template forms that people had to fill out. I mean, for these types of expenses, they had to list everything. They had to provide us documentation, receipts, everything. So.
Just have another question.
Sure, go ahead.
I mean, you don't have to answer, but I mean, we close to an agreement with Ada, or I mean, it's not related to
that. Was my question. Is so this is the renter we're paying. The owner, are they suing us?
Well, she has filed a claim, and I did send her information, but I haven't heard back from her.
But you just said the building wasn't damaged.
No.
There was some damage in the. So, like for example, when the fire department went in, they broke the handles on doors. They had to damage some doors to get into the apartments to check them, and that's a cost that the landlord or that the owner Ada is seeking reimbursement for. Also, there was some damage in the basement. I believe there was some flooding or something that happened in the basement. And she's seeking recoupment for those damages as well.
That's what I heard.
All right, so that's another outstanding lawsuit. Okay.
Can you follow up and see if we can get that one final? Because I
Yep.
mean, I will hate to say that. I mean, I'm hoping that we're not going to pay more than $40,000 on that one.
Well, it's a negotiation, so I'm starting, you know, we want to, I want to protect the city's interests. I want to make sure we're not just offering the maximum, you know.
Wear your bulletproof and.
Linda, do you have a question?
I'm upset, thank you.
Anyone else with a question?
I think.
Yeah, we have to pay. I guess.
All right, so the motion
Make a motion
is,
to transfer
so to approve the request
for free cash to Jose Ball.
Or second? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Um, 13 and 14 for you guys. Those are just housekeeping, so those are gone. And
how about 8?
Before we jump into 8, we're gonna go into Mike's in a minute.
Yeah, that's gone.
Oh, I mean 8. I saw Sullivan, so I was thinking. So 8, 13, and 14 are motions to deny. Take them up as a package. Make a motion to do that.
Second.
All those in favor? All opposed? Motion is to deny them because they're just housekeeping. All those in favor? All opposed?
Aye.
That's it. Make a whole of this.
Did we already vote on the actual, we just voted to take them up as a package, right?
Did they not?
We didn't, we didn't vote to actually deny them yet, did we?
No, we did.
Yeah, we did. I said all in favor, all opposed. Yeah.
Did we already
Well,
do?
you're still stuck on the
Take
second.
them up as a package?
So we'll do it again. So remember, the motion is to deny. All in favor, all opposed.
I take your word on it. I was momentarily distracted.
Oh, sure.
Wait, hold on. Mike, they were supposed to, now that I thought the 1.2 was your order to take from stabilization. So we put it on incorrectly. I apologize. We'll take it up at next finance, which is to take from stabilization. Your request to address take from stabilization to apply towards the budget to try and offset the tax rate.
Right.
I misread it. I apologize for that. That's yeah.
Oh, the different?
So we took the wrong one up out of committee. We can't take it up now simply because it's not on the agenda.
You owe me 3.5 hours.
I'm gonna.
Good luck.
Good luck.
So take them first.
I will take you first, Mike. But we appreciate you being here.
Yeah.
I'll hold you to that.
All right. Sorry about that, Mike. I apologize. But you did learn from about the revolving accounts, like we all did for the 4th time.
Yeah.
Bring them in. All right. So since that is, we didn't miss anything. Go through it.
That everything.
All right. So the motion is to adjourn. All those in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
All opposed?